Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think we're now live. So welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee of Portsmouth City Council, held in the Guildhall. I'm Gerald Dunn-Jackson, I chair this committee. Just to go through the usual things, to say that we're not expecting a fire alarm. If there is one, please meet by the Queen Victoria statue and sign out if you've signed in at the front desk down here. This meeting is being live streamed, we hope. That means that when you're speaking and using the microphone, you need to push the button to turn it on. You will be seen by the world at large, or at the 3 people who are watching. So don't be surprised by that. Colleagues, when you're voting, please make sure your hands are clear, and so we know exactly what you are voting for. We do each planning application in a set order. The first thing we do is the planning officers here give the presentation about each application. Then anybody who's come to speak at the committee, either councillors or members of the public, has their chance to speak. And there is 12 minutes set aside for people who want to support an application, 12 minutes set aside for people who don't want an application to go through. And then local councillors do get a chance to talk as well. Then there are questions from members of the Planning Committee, who are the members who are sat in the first 2 rows, and myself. And then the members of the Planning Committee have a discussion about what their view will be about come to a conclusion. The last 2 bits of that are just for members of the Planning Committee and not for other people who are here. So, okay, so we have apologies for lateness for Councillor Shah, who's going to be half an hour late. I do know that Councillor Candlish is on his way and will be here in a few minutes. If we've started an application to talk it through, and somebody arrives partway through, then they're not allowed to take part in the decision because they've not heard the whole way through. So those are the apologies for absence. I think we've got. Have we got any more that we need to be aware of? No. Okay. Can we just then run through and so everybody introduces themselves? Shall we start with members of the committee? Councillor Atwell.
Good morning, Chair. Chris Atwell, St Thomas Ward.
And Chair, Mary Vallely, Cosham and Wimmering.
Good morning, Chair. Judith Smythe, St Jude Ward and Vice Chair of this committee.
Good morning, Councillor Derek North for Cosham and Wimmering.
Good morning, Chair. Matthew Cordy, Member for Hilsey.
Morning, Chair. Richard Adair, Councillor for Nelson Ward.
Good morning, Councillor Hugh Mason, Councillor for St Jude Ward.
Thank you. And then if we start over on my left, your right, David.
Good morning, Chair. David Hodges, Head of Development Management.
Simon Turner, one of the team leaders in Development Management.
And from Democratic Services?
Anna Martin, Democratic Services.
Okay, and then people who are here to speak, thank you.
Morning, Oliver Gooch, applicant for Cardiff Road.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt?
Yeah, I'm Councillor Lee Hunt, and I'm here to speak this morning on 2 items in Nelson Ward, which covers Stamshall, Tipner, Buckland and North End. And I'm also speaking on Woodpath this morning, opposing that application as the Community Safety Cabinet Member on the City Council.
Thank you very much indeed. And ladies who are next door to Councillor Hunt? Lovely, thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm Kay White. I live at 43B Grove Road South, and it's regarding 21 Woodpath.
Thank you.
Councillor Graham Heaney. I'm a St Jude Ward councillor appearing under deputation for 21 Woodpath.
Lovely. And at the back row?
Good morning, Chair. I'm the applicant for 37 Henderson Road.
37 Henderson Road. So you're Joel?
Apologies, yes, Joel Walker.
Thanks, Joel.
Good morning, Carrie-Anne Wells. I'm the agent for Derby, 41 Derby Road today. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, I think that's where we are, and we are joined by Councillor Candlish. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for being slightly late. My name is Councillor Peter Candlish, Eastern Ean Cranes and Water Ward.
Lovely, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any declarations of interest? Councillor Atwell.
Chair, it's not a declaration. I need to leave at 1 o'clock today. And I'm sure you didn't miss the planning solicitor out on purpose.
Say all that again slowly.
I'm sure you didn't miss the planning solicitor out on purpose in the introductions.
Oh, Juliet, I'm sorry. My apologies profusely. You're the most expensive one of us.
I'm not sure that I am. I don't mind you missing me out. I can remain anonymous. I'm Juliet Gill from Legal Services. I'm the planning solicitor.
Thank you very much indeed, Juliet. Thanks, Chris, for alerting me. Okay. Colleagues, any declarations of interest we need to declare? No. Okay, minutes of the previous meeting on the 18th of December. Colleagues, you happy with those minutes? Yep, okay. Just one item to let you know. I understand that at a fairly recent meeting we made a decision about Sussex Road in a conservation area about whether to allow a building to be demolished. I understand that the applicants appealed our decision to say no, and the appeal has been dismissed. So the inspector decided we made the right decision. Which I'm sure, which I think is the right thing. But anyway, okay, let's move. Anna.
They were sent out separately. If anyone needs a copy, let me know.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right, so let's move on through the applications that are in front of us. We also understand them because we had a briefing yesterday about this agenda, and we wanted to know a bit more about what Hampshire County Council's involvement might be in this. So they may be coming, but there appears to be a fire on the motorway which may have delayed them. But if they're here in time, they're here in time. If they're not, they're not. Okay, so David, are you going to be doing...
Mr. Turner will present.
Oh, Simon. Now, let's see if the IT works. This is an issue that often tries us. Aha! Does that look better, Uncle Hugh?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the applicant has made a request to make a deputation, and they're about 10 minutes away, so thank you. This is an application at 21 Woodpath, which is for the change of use from a dwelling house, Class C3, to a two-bedroomed assisted living home, Class C2. We have some updates to come and lots of deputations as well. So just to locate members, Woodpath is in central Southsea. You can see Elm Grove running east to west along the northern part of the picture. So we're just in that part of Southsea. You can see the former St John's College in the southeast corner on the aerial photograph there. There's a couple of detached buildings. And there's Grove Road South just running down to Southsea Centre. So a pretty central location in Southsea. Woodpath has one-way vehicular traffic from north to south. The property is halfway or towards the southern end of the road. On the left-hand side you can see it. It's part of a post-war development that fronts onto Grove Road South and Woodpath itself with a rear garage court. But the property for the purpose of the application is just the house, not the garages. So it's half of a semi-detached house. I think it's on the next slide. Photograph, there we are, there's the application site. So it has a small back garden. And then if we go to the next photograph, there it is. So it's one half of a post-war pair of semis with a front garden. The application has come to committee because of 16 objections from 15 addresses and due to a call-in from Councillor Heaney. So the application is for a change of use from dwelling house to a Class C2 assisted living home. Hampshire County Council Social Services are engaged with the applicant. The property has already been brought into use, as the report sets out, since last summer with one individual being assisted, cared for. That has caused a lot of difficulties. I'm sure members of the public and neighbours will explain some of that to you shortly. The applicant has not sought to hide that and has acknowledged that that has been a great difficulty. The placement was an emergency placement and has not turned out very well, but they effectively had no choice. That aside, this is an application for the use of the property as a assisted living. It could be for any age of occupier. This Class C2 wouldn't restrict that. As it happens, they intend it to be for young people aged between 14 to 17, but as I say, it could be for anyone else who requires care and assistance in their day-to-day living. Staffing would, as you would expect, be adjusted to fit the needs of the actual occupiers. At the moment, the current occupier has high staff levels because of high needs, but that is not their intention for the longer term. If planning permission is granted, the existing occupier is due to be moving out shortly. There will be a minimum of 2 staff proposed for the 2 occupiers. Perhaps if we look at the property, thank you, into the floor space. So no internal changes physically to the property. So there's the front door and moving into a good-sized living room on the left-hand side, which takes you through into a good-sized kitchen at the back, and that in turn leads out either to the back garden or to a side shower utility room. Or going straight upstairs, 2 good-sized bedrooms, a good-sized bathroom, a second bathroom, and at the front you can see office stroke sensory room. That started off being called bedroom 3, but since the application is for a maximum of 2 residents, that would be for office or sensory room use. As the report sets out, there is to be 24-hour assistance and care from the staffing, be it be 2 or more staff. So there would be a member of staff overnight, and that office stroke sensory room is big enough to accommodate a bed, a single bed, should it be a sleeping member of staff or indeed a waking member of staff formally as part of their role. Thank you. If we could just perhaps go through the rest of the property. There's the front door, top left, outside in, and then top right in the hallway looking out. Bottom left, one of the bedrooms, bedroom 2. Bottom right, the living room. So a fairly standard post-war property there. Thank you. Next slide. So top left is the kitchen. That's the back door on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side of that picture, next to the radiator, is the door into the ground floor utility shower room. The bottom right-hand image is pretty much the same image, just showing a bit more of the dining space. Top right is the kitchen again, looking across the kitchen, and then the back door, bottom left, out into the back garden. So not much more to show you really of the property. So depending on the needs of the residents, if granted planning consent, as I say, the staffing will be provided for whatever their needs are. If they are indeed young people, 14 to 17, they might be in full-time education and be assisted in that, or they might be being schooled on the premises or off the premises, and would receive assistance in that, as well as the normal day-to-day living as part of growing up, or if indeed they're adults, normal day-to-day living to assist them leading as normal a life as possible. The premises, apart from Hampshire's involvement with the placing, the premises would be regulated by Ofsted. As the report makes clear, if planning permission is obtained, the applicant would then go on to register with Ofsted for the premises. We've received a number of objections. The property is, of course, sought for a land use, not an individual occupier. The individual occupier has been the problem, a difficulty in terms of the last few months. But looking to the future, if approved, and without any emergency placement like currently, the land use can be expected not to be so different, if properly managed, to a normal C3 dwelling house. So the key is for the management of the premises, the selection of occupiers, is this correct premises for their needs, and the correct management and care and assistance for them, and that is for other regulatory regimes outside of the planning system. Thank you. And then just moving on to the Supplementary Matters report, the SMAT, just for clarity, the development description was changed during the course of the application as the third bedroom was changed into the office sensory room. In the printed report, the hyperlink still refers to 3-bedroom, but to clarify that is 2-bedroomed. And then secondly, just for completeness, the special protection areas, the birds and the harbours and the Solent, this is one change of use from one residential type to another, which is deemed to be neutral in terms of effects on nitrates and recreational bird disturbance. So there's no mitigation required. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. We now come to members of the public. Who was it? Councillor Heaney, do you need to run away and teach?
No, I don't, but I would like to ask some clarification. You said that the applicants are on their way to...
Well, I think somebody from Hampshire County Council.
Well, Hampshire County Council aren't the applicants.
No, but they're the users of.
Right,
okay.
So can I clarify?
They're commissioners.
Oh, commissioners thereof.
They're not users of, they have a contract.
Yeah,
So
okay.
can I clarify? Normally, the applicant would present their case first, because objectors may want to respond to whatever the applicant says. If they arrive after the deputations have started, would you allow the applicant to then do their deputation? And if you do, would you allow any other deputations to either come back on any points that they might have raised, or will you not allow them to carry on the deputation because they've missed their opportunity?
Juliet.
Objectors go first to enable the applicant to respond to any comments made.
So I think we have 5 people wanting to object. So the normal thing would be for them to go first. We'll see if Hampshire County Council has arrived by then. Okay, so I'm conscious that people need to be heard with microphones, and to make sure that we don't give everybody COVID, we're only using every other seat. Therefore, Graham, do you want to... Joe, you'll move one. We just like to make sure that everybody is heard. So, let me get my stopwatch out.
Sorry, members actually go last.
Yeah,
so.
okay. We will see how we get along, Juliet. So we will start, when I've got my stopwatch out, with Scarlett Wayne, if that's okay. And you've got 4 minutes, or would you like, is there a different order?
Oh, hello.
Hi.
I'm going to be speaking. I'm Kay. I'm going to be speaking on behalf of everybody.
Oh, okay. So in which case, Kay, you get 6 minutes, if that's okay.
Okay.
Lovely. Okay, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Obviously, it's to do with 21 Woodpath, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself, 41A, 41B, 43A, Grove Road South, and number 19 Woodpath. As stated in section 3.1, that changes will be made to the rooms. Will this now mean that more work... is going to
Yeah,
be
the
carried
microphone's
out,
on, and we can hear you loud and clear.
which will mean more disturbance.
Okay, hold on. One of the committee can't. Could you lean a bit further in and yell?
Okay, okay.
Those of us who are old and deaf.
Can I do that? Okay, sorry.
Shall we
Just start again.
start again?
Okay. I'm speaking on behalf of myself, 41A, 41B, 43A, Grove Road South, and number 19 Woodpath. As stated in 3.1, that changes will be made to the rooms. Will this now mean that more work is going to be carried out, which will be more disturbances for the neighbourhood? In 3.3, it states that staffing will will be on the needs of the individual. Until an individual has been allocated to reside at the premises, no number of staff to care for them can be deduced. 3.6, regarding a frosty glazing, is it suitable for a person to be living in a home with no access to view of the surrounding areas? 6.2, in relation to this, you stated there is no material impact of the highway network, when in fact, due to, we believe, with the care provided, there's been significant impact due to extra staff call-outs and emergency services being in attendance. We have already experienced this on 8 occasions, and around 50% of these days, homeowners were unable to access their homes due to the emergency services blocking the road. 6.3 states there will be no material impact on parking due to its intended use being children. At present, there is a resident living there with a large vehicle parking in a private area which is not designated for its parking and constantly parking across number 19 Woodpaths Gate. 6.8, meetings with Verve, Home Care and Hampshire on the 23rd of the 8th, 24 and the 18th of the 10th, 24, you'll see that noise complaints have been raised. I've got some minutes here. With the building being semi-detached and some of the soundproofing work being completed prior to the resident moving in. Verve must have already anticipated a noise disturbance. Unfortunately, due to Verve not fulfilling their actions agreed in the meeting on the 23rd of the 8th, 24, we were unaware where to make noise complaints. Noise complaints were reported to Hampshire County Council at the second meeting. As you've stated previously, you're unaware of the residents going to live in the property. Therefore, how can you comment on noise level when it's dependent on the person living there? You cannot compare a Class C3 residential property with a 24-hour Class C2 property. 8.16, the agent states there will be a minimum of 2 staff. This could rise significantly depending on the young people living there or other residents, as it's a Class 2 accommodation. Therefore, parking cannot be ascertained at this point. At present, a vehicle is currently used for the resident, therefore that's already 3 cars, so this would have an impact on parking comparable to a 3-bed dwelling. Our main concern isn't who lives there, it's around the company Verve, who we believe has applied for the planning permission. Many of the previous issues raised are concerning the current resident. However, these issues will continue with new residents living as an application is for Class C2 use. Verve and Hampshire County Council have chosen to ignore concerns around a broken window caused by a resident in an episode at the beginning of September and is still exposed. This was reported again via email in December to the planning officer as considered a safeguarding issue. And as today, the window is yet to be replaced. Surely this must make the room not fit for purpose and uninhabitable. As a change of use is to a Class 2 use, there has been and could be issues in the future choosing a semi-detached house with no parking. Is it a suitable choice? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Ms Wayne and Ms Richards, is there anything that you would like to add in? Yes, you're more than welcome. You have some more time.
Okay, perfect. I don't know, sit down or stand up.
Whichever works for you.
Okay. So as Kay has said, I mean, I think our objections, I mean, we weren't advised earlier, you know, prior to the occupant and the people who have the lease on the property, what was going on there. And so we only found out because of the major disruption there was with the builders converting the property, which is then we found out what was going on. Our objections are not so much about, as Kay said, about the applicant or the person living there. It's about the unsuitability of the location of the residence that for this type of use, basically. You know, it's residential, it's domestic, it's a one-way street, there's very little off-street parking, and so the kind of use that is proposed is just not suitable. Plus, the applicant themselves, Verve, whatever they call themselves, are completely incompetent at managing the property and managing the person in there. And that is evidence, and we can demonstrate that with all the call-outs, all the problems, all the damage, etc. that's gone on since last August. So I just wanted to make it clear that for planning use, it wasn't about the person in there, it's about the unsuitability of the conversion.
Thank you very much indeed. Ms Wayne, anything else you'd like to add? No. Okay, that's fine. So we've been joined by two people during the meeting so far. Councillor Shah, welcome. Have you got any declarations of interest that you need to declare? Lovely. And for this application, because you've not been here at the beginning, you'll just need to sit this one out. Thank you. And a young lady here, would you like to tell us who you'll need to push the button. Could you get the microphone a bit closer to you or yell at it a bit?
I'm Helen Palmer, Head of Care for Verve Home Care.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Helen, in the order of things would normally go, we'd hear from people who object to the planning application, which we've heard. We'd then hear from the applicant, who is yourself, and then we have councillors who then come after. Have you prepared anything to be able to say to us? And you'll be then welcome to speak. It was on.
All right. For us as Verve Home Care, we do.
In which case, fine, it's great. Yeah. You're going to get 6 minutes, but I have to turn my stopwatch on.
All right, okay, that's fine.
Okay, you're on.
So for us, for Verve Home Care, for them to be the C2 planning, the ideas was that we could support young people in the homes that need to be in the community. We were looking more of solo homes, but maximum of 2 if needed to be, if it was suitable for the property. Some of the things that we have done in the past in other areas where we have brought individuals and young people into the community and supported them to be part of the community sometimes in very complex situations. Some of the things that we try and look to improve on is their life and also bring them more closer to their family and friends and everything else like that. The main thing that we try to focus on as well is that we do a therapeutic report and work with the local councils and the ICB to bring this in to support young people that can be very, very complex at the time and help to bring that gap and support them into the community. The reasons for the C2 planning was so that we can show that we can do this in other areas as well, which we do have in other areas, and we have had some positive response back. So for us, it was around doing this in this local area and working with the council around being able to do this. With the support of our clinical leads and registered managers, we bring in a lot of support around PBS and how to manage in the community, and this is for the reasoning for the C2 planning.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Can I quickly ask one question?
Yeah.
You're commissioned by Hampshire County Council to do this provision, not by Portsmouth City Council, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Graham-Heaney, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try to address the main issues that are set out in the report, which are the principal development, impact on residential community, highway impacts, and then possibly other issues. On the issue of the principal development, I mean, given the need for family homes in Portsmouth and given the targets for housing, it seems to me that removing a 3-bed family home in a desirable location at this time should really be avoided unless there are very particular needs. However, I'm going to go on to explain that at a meeting that I attended with Hampshire County Council representatives and with residents on the 18th of October, it became clear that Hampshire County Council have said they do not regard the current property as suitable for the use which they had originally sought, and they have undertaken to relocate the current occupant somewhere else. So they have already decided that this is not a suitable property to use. Unfortunately, Verve didn't attend that meeting, despite the fact they met with council officers from Hampshire County Council a couple of hours earlier. They didn't actually bother to stay for the meeting and hear what residents had to say. So I think there's an issue around the principle of development. Is this a suitable property? Hampshire say no. Should we be taking homes out? Probably no. In relation to the residential amenity, residents have talked about the problems. The meeting on the 18th of October relayed a whole list of problems that had been encountered by residents, and I sent a copy of the notes of that meeting to the planning officers so they were aware. There were some information in those notes relating to the applicant, which obviously shouldn't be made public, and I made that clear when I sent the notes, but I said that the issues that it had raised I thought were important enough to consider within the application. But I noticed this isn't actually mentioned in the report. The issue of residential amenity in terms of noise, in 6.8, the environmental health officers say that they haven't received any complaints. But you have to remember that people don't tend to go to environmental health immediately there's a noise issue. And what happened with residents, they were engaging with Verve as the managers to try and resolve these issues. So it doesn't mean there weren't any issues, it just means they hadn't escalated. And it's often the case that people don't escalate until they have literally got to the end of their tether. So I think that needs to be borne in mind when you're thinking about the impact of residential amenity. In terms of highway impacts, I mean, this development is actually on a one-way street, a narrow one-way street with parking on one side. You can only travel from north to south. There is also Woodpath House, which is an elderly person's accommodation opposite. And we have had problems which residents have talked about in relation to the emergency services having to attend, because some of the people who are here have challenging behaviours, which sometimes cause problems. And I understand some residents have had to wait up to 2 hours while police and emergency services effectively block the road and have not allowed them access. Now, I think a continued use of this might present similar problems. And given that you have an elderly person's accommodation opposite, which may need ambulance access, that could cause problems as well, in my view. I suppose the other thing to say is that Verve Home Care is a professional organisation. They know what the rules are. They deliberately chose to occupy this property without applying for planning permission and sought to carry it on. And only after a few months of occupation did they put in an application. I'm surprised that an organisation like that should operate in such a way. And it does seem to me that they are trying sometimes to take the planning committee members for granted, hoping that once they've occupied, they'll then give people permission. But I think there are a whole host of reasons why this is not necessary. As I said, given that the current applicant, the current resident will be leaving, there is no identified use for this property. There are no identified people going to be using this. And it seems to me that this property could stay empty for some considerable time. I'm not sure it meets the needs of Portsmouth residents. So again, I think in terms of the principal development, I think we've got a bit of an issue there. So I think I'll leave my comments there, and I hope members will consider not agreeing to support this application.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lee Hunt, as community, Cabinet Member for Community Safety, I know you have a view on this.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think what's really important is you look at the report, and the report isn't very convincing at all. I don't think the officer's heart are in the report. The introduction was quite brief. It's quite a scant report, and there's nothing that I have heard from Verve which addresses any of the issues that concern me, which are reflected by the residents. Fear of crime and fear of antisocial behaviour is a very important part of your consideration. There's nothing in the report about this, and I've taken this up with officers recently and indeed only yesterday. Having read the report, I have concerns about some of the matters raised, or all of the matters raised by the residents ring true. If I could just point out one thing, I'm not going off piece, but my own experience of a slightly larger but similar use in Livingston Road, not too far away, saw all the concerns raised by residents today objecting this application come true. Police were indeed chasing youngsters to the house, running after them to make arrests and recover stolen property. Also called to antisocial behaviour within and around the managed property and in the back garden with shouting, bad behaviour and profanities. And after 9 months of mayhem in that quiet residential street, no different to Woodpath, the house was closed, and the indications are from Councillor Heaney that that might happen regardless, but the use will still remain if you were to give it consent and somebody else would go there. And it was sold, and the service moved nearby to a similar property, but set away from neighbours and residents, and it's worked, my understanding, it's worked since then. As the applicant said, I am very concerned as a Cabinet member for community safety for the city that this is similarly inappropriate use and or location, and this hitherto quiet residential street which may unnecessarily have an adverse impact on the quiet enjoyment of homes and nearby residents. And I think the clashes will also antagonise, that was my previous experience, of residents' relationships with the intended occupiers. From the report 8.7, if I point to 8.7 in the report, officers make it clear there may be additional noise and disturbance from the comings and goings of staff, and the report shows that very clearly. I, for one, am not reassured by the report, or I'm sorry to say, not what Verve said today. At 8.22, officers point out its use is causing complaints already, and you have heard evidence this morning, members, hard evidence of issues around antisocial behaviour in the street already. And that has resulted in meetings, and it may be that if you were to grant permission today, that this will be a change of life for residents all along Woodpath. They'll be all the time going backwards and forwards to the police office, to mediation services and so on. So this will see an extra burden on the overstretched police and the council services that I oversee. Mediation, we've already heard about noise this morning, community wardens and all those community safety aspects that I oversee, and that is a concern for me because we are already overstretched. And to add this to the patrols of our officers and the police would be an additional burden on those services. So I would also add, if I may, that Southsea already accepts more than its fair share of these sorts of uses. It is very true. So these applicants here, you could tell by the way that they were speaking that they're not concerned about the occupants. They probably do want them to get on with their lives, as we all do, but it's location, 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 and this is really and truly the wrong location. So I think that is about it from me, short and sweet. The evidence is there for you to reject this application, I think, on a range of issues described by the residents, by Councillor Heaney, and our fears about crime and antisocial behaviour, which have already been established, and the evidence given to you this morning. That's it from me. Thank you very much indeed for giving me the time to speak this morning.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, colleagues, we now come to questions from members of the committee. I have one to start with that I don't know, Simon, if you're able to help with, or whether the applicant. Could we have the plan of the interior of the building up, if that's possible? There we are. So if there are meant to be 2 members of staff here, are they waking night staff, or are they sleeping in? And if so, where are they going to be located?
So it will be working night.
Okay, so will they both be in the office/sensory room if they're not needed elsewhere?
Yes.
Lovely. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any questions? Councillor Adair.
Yeah, I was just wondering why Woodpath was chosen when it's manifestly unsuitable for the proposed requirements. There must be other buildings within the city that would be far more suitable for this sort of application.
And of course, as members of the committee, we have no knowledge or whatever able to comment on that. Anybody is allowed to purchase a building that they have money for anywhere in the country. Okay, any other questions, ladies and gentlemen? Councillor Mason.
We have on page 9 reference made to the Human Rights Act 1998, the right to enjoyment of property, and also to the Equality Act 2010. These would appear in this case potentially to come into conflict. How would one judge which had precedence?
I'm sure Juliet can tell us.
The Equalities Act, we have to apply the test. We're under a duty to apply the Equalities Act. You also need to apply the Human Rights Act. One doesn't trump the other. They're different bits of legislation covering different things.
And it would seem to me, Councillor Mason, that there are issues on either side, both from the person who might be being cared for here, who has rights, but also the residents who also have rights, and they may be.
I would agree.
They may be in conflict.
Agree.
Okay, Councillor Smythe.
I just have a question to follow up on that important question. Clearly, I think it's surprising that so few people have mentioned the unfortunate individual who's living in the house, or for, in the future possibly too, people going through very bad stages in their lives. They presumably have the rights to daylight, the right to live in a house that's properly repaired and doesn't let in cold air because of a previous break that's occurred. Is that the case, and should we take that into account?
Juliet, I think that's one for you.
Sorry, could you repeat it, Councillor Smythe?
I'm concerned about the Human Rights or Equalities Act as it applies to the resident in the house, which has not been, where the broken window has still just been boarded up, and where most of the windows, if not all, are frosted glass. So I don't think that's a humane environment to put somebody going through a very challenging part of their life.
In terms of planning, you need to consider that it's residential amenity that you'll need to be considering under the planning application.
Thank you. I'll come back with some comments on the same theme, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Atwell.
So just to clarify that, so is the broken window for our consideration under planning, material planning consideration? Is it?
I believe, I mean, we will have that professionally answered, but those sorts of things are normally building regulations or indeed Ofsted inspectorate. When in my comments, I'll come on to illustrate how I think they do make a difference.
Simon, you're going to...
Thank you. I understand that the obscure glazing is also reinforced. It was the obscurity, the frosting was provided for the current occupier and the interface with residents, and the strengthened glazing was also provided for the needs of the current occupier, the difficult behaviour and so on. So that occupier is set to leave shortly, as I say, both the applicant and Hampshire have acknowledged that that placement was not the right placement. It was an emergency. With a proper placement, without an emergency, of the right people for the premises, with the right care, I would imagine that they would no longer need that frosted and strengthened glazing because it will be more normal living, and I would imagine that would be replaced and everyone's concerns in that particular respect would be dealt with. Okay, any other questions? No, then in terms of comments, and I'm going to start off if I can, and take Chair's prerogative. And I come from this having worked in this field doing children's social care for Hampshire County Council, although many years ago, and in other places. And I have some significant sympathy for Hampshire, but I have a real concern about this. In terms of what social services will try to do, the first thing they will try to do is to try to maintain children within their own families. And if that's not possible, then whether another member of the family can care. And if that's not possible, then a foster placement. And
And if that's not possible, then a place within a residential establishment run by the council. And only then, when that doesn't work, do we go and look at external private provision of residential accommodation. That means that the young people who need that sort of support have very substantial levels of needs, and that might be that they are incredibly vulnerable and need significant protection. But often it is because they are very disruptive and very difficult to manage. And we're being asked here to make a decision to say whether this is an appropriate location for this to happen. My personal view is that a semi-detached house with somebody living just on the other side of the wall is entirely inappropriate. You have to, as we've heard with the strengthened glass, with these sorts of places, you build them with much stronger materials because they have to take a lot of punishment. And it just seems to be really inappropriate. And I don't know what Hampshire Council are thinking about, but if they need to provide for their kids, then they need to provide for their kids in their own area. I would, my personal view is I would be not supporting this. I think it's entirely inappropriate location. But I'm happy to be guided by the committee to say, Councillor Smythe.
I'd like to build on everything that's been said, with which I entirely agree. I'm quite shocked at the lack of thought for the unfortunate young person who's living there and the unfortunate young people that would live there in the future. And I wanted to raise that as an addition to all the comments I've made. I think it's in an entirely inappropriate environment for those types of children because of everything that's been said, but particularly I am extremely sceptical about the ability of Verve itself to manage that sort of accommodation in this sort of place. They've left the windows boarded over in freezing cold temperatures for a long time. They've put frosted glass up. You can get strengthened clear glass, and a lot of the disturbance that's been experienced by local residents is distressing examples of a very, very unhappy young person who is clearly not herself, themselves being kept safe properly as it should happen in the building. And I think it's particularly important for us. We are a social care authority. I hope we would never commission that sort of service for any of our children who have to have, as Councillor Vernon Jackson has talked about, that kind of self-contained accommodation in the community. But I think we need to refuse it on those sorts of grounds, particularly as we know that new arrangements and new residents haven't yet been selected. And indeed, I believe Hampshire would probably be reconsidering the agent that was going to provide care in that dwelling because of the past history of it. So I don't think we've got enough information, as has already been pointed out, to make a decision. So I would like to propose that we refuse this application for all the reasons given. It's not to say that people won't come back later when there's perhaps a better managing agent in place with more guarantees, perhaps more focus on the needs of the particular individuals that need to live there and to whom it would be beneficial. But I'd like to propose that we refuse this application.
Thank you, Councillor Smythe. We will be asked by the planning officers what planning terms refusal should be based upon.
Yes, we will.
What would you like to tell the planning officers?
An inappropriate home for the use proposed, coupled with traffic parking and access arrangements being limited, particularly when there are emergencies, coupled with inadequate accommodation as seen at present for vulnerable young people.
Could I ask, would you be prepared to accept also the issue of residential amenity for the neighbours that looks to be going to be significantly compromised?
Yes, I certainly would. I think I'd like to say residential amenity and distress.
Okay.
Because it's not simply about the use. It's about the, you know, hearing
Yeah. Mr. Turner,
people in distress.
is that enough for you, or is that what would your advice be?
Thank you.
On David is also wanting to waive.
I understand about the inappropriate home home or property for use, as Councillor Smythe has just described. That would be due to the proximity of the premises to neighbours. I understand about traffic and parking concerns. That's due to the street being one way and with limited parking. Could Councillor Smythe just explain about how the accommodation is inappropriate for the occupiers, please, so I can understand that?
Well, at the moment, it's clear lack of maintenance and particularly repairing a window, and also the obscure glass. You can perfectly easily get glass which you can see the outside in, which is strengthened, and it seems to me that I certainly couldn't live in a place where I couldn't see the outside.
Okay. So I have Councillor Mason waiting, but Mr. Turner, does that help?
The lack of maintenance as a window wouldn't be a planning reason to withhold planning consent. The issue of obscured glazing, in this instance for the current occupier, I believe it's a balance of privacy both ways, as against their amenity in terms of being able to see out into the street or over the back garden. I don't think that balance would be necessary for a more appropriate placement.
Can we talk then about the inadequate management of the care under current?
I don't think you can in terms of planning.
Okay, I guessed that was the case, but I wanted to ask the question because it does seem to me that is an absolute.
That's an Ofsted issue. But when they came to register, but anyway, let's. But we can't use it as a planning thing. So
also a Hampshire County Council issue with commissioning something that's so.
But okay, and we know Hampshire County Council are in crisis in many ways. Simon, in terms of residential amenity for neighbours, is that sufficient, or do we need to? I've got a particular concern about the Woodpath House opposite, which is a sheltered accommodation for the elderly. And therefore residents being particularly vulnerable there.
I've drafted a reason. Councillor Mason has his hands up. And
but I'm coming to him next, but you take precedence.
Shall I read out the draft reason?
Yep.
The proposed use would cause noise and disturbance to local residents and harmful impacts on the highway network due to the proximity of the premises to neighbours and the one-way street with limited parking. As such, the proposal conflicts with policies PCS 23, that's amenity, and PCS 17, that's highway matters.
Okay, Councillor Mason?
I think we might also concentrate on the house. That the property, by reason of its construction, it is semi-detached, it is a relatively lightweight 1950s construction. By reason of its construction and its location, that is opposite in a fairly dense residential area and opposite old people's accommodation, the house, by reason of its construction and location, is not suitable for persons with special needs.
Mr. Turner?
I thought that the use of the word proximity, the proximity of the premises to neighbours is all-encompassing in that.
I think Hugh Mason is after something to be slightly more specific.
Well, if members would like to include that, that could be included.
And the issue about the actual building being inappropriate on the basis it's just
the construction of the building, and that it is a semi-detached building in a densely settled area.
David, you have a worry.
Yeah, I don't think we've got the evidence to support that, Chair, and also that potentially the building could be soundproof to meet those concerns anyway. So I would not have that. Struggling with. I don't think we would have the evidence to support that particular issue, and I don't think we've got the evidence that they couldn't provide soundproofing to the building.
So I'm sorry, but having worked in residential establishments for this client group for years, I have way enough evidence in my mind to say it's entirely inappropriate. Okay, Councillor Mason, just going back to you. Are you satisfied?
No.
Okay, I've got Councillor Smythe. Wait a second. I have Councillor Atwell, who hasn't yet spoken in this section, and then I will come to you. Councillor
Just a follow up on that because it's not.
We'll
it's
come
not,
to.
There are plenty of evidence.
Councillor Atwell.
I wonder in 8.22, acknowledge that the existing use is generating complaints and issues, or any of those complaints and issues related to anything that could be considered criminality. And it's a question, but I wanted to explore.
Okay, I don't know. Councillor Smythe?
The point is fear of crime is a material planning consideration.
Okay, thank you.
I wanted to see if we could build on Councillor Mason's suggestion, because the earlier news I had of the as a local ward councillor was about people not being worried about noise of people having fun, but hearing noise of genuine distress, and hearing repeated noise, and having to live through a night of hearing the current resident breaking a window, to the extent of, I mean, not a sort of place where local residents can bring up children who are not worried and frightened. I think it's one thing having a loud party now and again, but these are noises of huge distress. And if we can build that into Councillor Mason's application, I think we can say that the building is unsuitable for that. It's significant that some of the people here who've made deputations are living in Grove Road. They're not living in Woodpath. They're living in Grove Road, where they can hear noise of distress, of windows being broken, of frightened young person. I think that is grounds for refusing a planning application, together with the two other reasons given. And we have plenty of evidence of that.
Yeah.
As Councillor Mason said, he has sent, as Councillor Heaney said, he has sent minutes of a meeting where all that was recorded to the planning officers. And if we can find a way of phrasing that, perhaps Councillor Mason could help again, because that was very useful. I think that it is relevant.
And I would agree. I think if you've got a young person in very significant levels of distress, either they continue to act out, at which point things can be very noisy, or if staff feel they have to restrain that young person, and that is very noisy, and causes considerable concern.
I mean, I'm also worried about us, on our watch, approving a application where a child is clearly not, in my view, the evidence shows is not being looked after safely. And we are a Children's Services Authority. I realise it's not us who've been placing people there, but it's very difficult for the public to understand that.
Yep.
And I don't want to have a child in such distress living in my patch.
No, but so we are. I don't know what Hampshire are doing, but I know in Portsmouth we are paying up to £20,000 a week to look after one child, because their levels of disturbance are so great. And there aren't the secure units that there used to be, and they've been shut down left, right and centre. Now we're looking across the country about councils working together to recreate that provision, but it'll take years to build.
Like you, I've worked in child protection as well, and I feel passionately about this. Thank you.
So Simon, the issue of, in terms of what residents will hear in terms of their fear of crime and things like that, are you able to add that in?
Fear of crime is a difficult one, subject to much case law, will depend on each and every circumstances. I don't know if David has anything else to add, but the management of the premises, the proper management of the premises, should ensure that no crime takes place. There may be challenging behaviours that are properly managed, but I'm not sure about crime.
But we don't have to manage it if disturbing behaviour will be properly managed.
Chair, you're considering a planning application for the use of the building. You're not casting judgment on the applicant.
Correct.
So that's, you need to be really clear on that.
Yes, I agree.
So you need to work on the basis that it can be operated by a competent operator.
Okay, and I'm absolutely clear it is in an appropriate location for any operator to be providing that service. however good their Ofsted things were. Councillor Vallely.
I don't understand why we're not referencing the fact that there's an old people's home there, because that will make a significant difference on access for ambulances.
Just to be clear, it's not an old people's home, it is sheltered accommodation for the elderly.
I apologise.
And the residents would be terribly upset if you told them they lived in an old people's home. Yeah, their point is entirely true, but we need to be accurate. I think I have a proposal from Councillor Smythe, seconded by Councillor Mason, for refusal on the grounds listed by Mr Turner. Mr Turner, do you want to run through them again?
Yep, so we had the first two, amenity and highway matters. The third one we've just discussed about the construction of the property and therefore noise transmission. And then fourthly, fear of crime as well.
Yep.
Okay. In that case, the proposed use would cause noise and disturbance to local residents and a fear of crime and harmful impacts to the highway network due to the construction of the semi-detached property and the proximity of the premises to other neighbours as well, and the one-way street with limited parking. As such, the proposal conflicts with PCS 23 for amenity, PCS 17, and I need to make sure about the correct reference, policy reference for fear of crime. I shall have to find that for you.
Okay.
Chair, I would have thought that something like that would fall under residential amenity rather than as a separate.
Okay, we'll leave you to
Because
come
it's
back.
the impact on the residential amenity, isn't it?
It is 23, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Candlish.
I had been, I was wondering what was being said about the transport, so I think we have to be a little bit careful. This is a semi-detached property. Parking is a mess all through there, very, very tight. I think the critical and specific thing about this property is that it is on a one-way road, and it seems that there is a high likelihood of regular need for access by emergency vehicles, causing a blockage and a disruption. So I think we should focus on the uniqueness part of this property and its use rather than on the general issue of parking.
Because somebody living in here could have had a family can have 3 cars easily.
Not easily because of parking permits,
they would be allowed
could
to
have 2 cars easily, and
they could
there
have
are occasionally needs for more to go to a place. But I think specifically going against this, the access.
No, I agree. Yeah. I think you're completely right. Easily may have been the wrong word, but legally. Colleagues, is there any other proposal to be put forward? No. Okay. Can I see those who want to vote to reject planning permission on this property, please show. Okay, that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. And can we make sure that we record that Councillor Shah took no part in this planning application? Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's move along, and we now go to Kingston House. A house that many of us will know over the years. Ladies and gentlemen, you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting if you want to, but we'll completely understand if you want to escape. Okay, David, is this you, or is it Simon?
It's Mr. Turner again.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an application at Kingston House in Netley Road, Southsea, for the change of use of the building to form an 11-bedroom, 11-person HMO. That's a house in multiple occupation. Just to locate you, we're just tucked away between Clarence Parade to the south and Osborne Road to the north. So Netley Road, you can see there, it comes off Osborne Road. So just to the north, you've got that stretch of shops, restaurants, takeaways, and other commercial premises. But immediately you turn the corner to Netley Road, it becomes residential. Lots of period properties within the conservation area, and some of them are listed. I think Netley Terrace is listed. So you can see the Kingston House on the corner there, little sort of chicane. Just to the immediate south on the left-hand side, you can see two pubs, Apsley House on the left, and then next door the Auckland Arms, I think it is. So unusual juxtaposition of two pubs there. And then as you wind your way south, you emerge out shortly onto Clarence Parade and the common opposite. So this is an application to use the premises. Perhaps we could look at some photos first, please, David, and carry on. Thank you. Back one, yeah. So on the right-hand side is the front elevation that faces north up towards Osborne Road. So you can see the front door in the middle there, and then you've got 3 stories of accommodation, clearly as built, I think, with the original construction into the roof there, with very steep ceilings for the dormers there, or the gables. And the right-hand side, the brick element, 2-story element, is also part of the premises. That's the front door. On the left-hand side, you can see the aerial image. So there's a ground floor extension that houses the kitchen, and on the corner, where you see the gate into the mews behind, is the existing refuse store area that would be retained. And then,
Simon, can I just check? There are 2 brick bits here. There's the one on the other side of the courtyard, which from my memory is the flats above and not connected. But does the whole of the building at right angles to the white bit, is that part of the application as well? Or is it just the bit that's the white bit and the little bit at the end that we can see here?
Okay, I'll describe it again. So, okay. Thank you, Chairman. So bottom right, you've got the rendered building, 3-story, and then you can just see in that image on the left-hand side the lower single-story extension on the left-hand side. That's the kitchen in there. There it is, flat roof, turning the corner, and that has the bin store by that door. On the right-hand side of the front elevation, the red brick element, that is also part of the premises. Although it looks different internally, it is linked. And moving to the rear of the premises, you can see there's a mews court, we call it. So there's a vehicle access and that court there. So you've got a series of garages on the ground floor rented out to whoever or to the residents. And there are first floor flats above that courtyard, effectively. The applicant owns that courtyard, but there are access rights by the various parties to use it for the parking or the access to their garages for those parking. And there is a back door as well to the application premises. So moving on to the next picture, there you are, there's the top left picture, the gates into that mews courtyard, and on the right hand side of that image, the doorway into the refuse store. And then the bottom right image is the rear south elevation of the premises. All of that rendered image is the premises, and the back door is just behind that van that I presume was just there for a few moments, because it's otherwise a circulation space. Thank you. Just a few more bits of background for you. The last lawful use was as a guest house some time ago, and members have seen there have been 1 or 2 planning applications in more recent times that haven't really gone very far, and there's been different uses. In recent times, we've had some unlawful so-called bed-sits. I think they were small individual flats, separate dwelling units, although very small. And we've had Airbnb use over the summer and still available, apparently. But the proposal in front of you is clear. It did start as the application as a mix of bed-sits and HMO. We thought that was inappropriate. It moved to an 11-bedroom, 17-person HMO. We thought that was too intensive, and the applicant has settled upon 11 bedrooms, all singly occupied, so 11 persons, and that is the application in front of you. And we've had a series of objections, 8 to the first round, that has meant this application has come towards you today. In terms of the layout of the premises, some changes, but not too extensive. So we've got the existing and then the proposed plans for each floor, so you can see the differences. So you can see the front door on the bottom of the image that takes you through into a hallway and straight out through the back door, should you want to do that, or you can turn left or right into the series of other rooms. So the next image will show the proposed dining living room. That was 2 rooms, that's been opened out into 1. The kitchen on the left-hand side, which is in that curved element we've seen on the corner, that would remain as a kitchen, and they're proposing a little laundry room in the corner there, or turning right from the front door into another living room that serves 2 bedrooms, bathroom, and the internal bike store. The bike store started off in the courtyard, but we were concerned about the manoeuvring ability for the users of that courtyard in their cars for parking, so it has come inside. Upstairs, that's the existing arrangement. The proposed arrangement for the next slide, not so different. So 5 more bedrooms. You've got, on the left-hand side, top left, you've got a shared bathroom. Top right, you've got another shared bathroom. Bottom centre, you've got a shared WC. And central right at the back, you've got a second kitchen that overlooks the Mews courtyard. And then up into the roof space, not so different. There's the existing, quite a lot of doors, bit of rationalisation there to form the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th bedrooms. So there is 1 ensuite to bedroom 8 there, bottom left, and another shared shower stroke WC. So remaining on the theme of the occupation, the proposed occupation, with 2 living rooms on the ground floor, a kitchen on the ground floor and a kitchen on the second floor, and various shared bathroom and toilets, and 1 ensuite. It meets your standards, we believe, as set out in the report, and will provide a suitable standard accommodation for those 11 occupiers. Moving on to, thank you, David, there's some photographs. There's the kitchen on the left-hand side, the one that is on the corner, sort of long and thin there, really. There's the entrance hall, so the back door is in front of you, the front door is behind you, looking straight up the stairs. That's the living room on the right-hand side that serves a couple of bedrooms, and that alcove to the right would become the bike store. So slightly compromised by the doors and the bike store, but it is nevertheless a second usable living room for the occupiers. Bedroom 2 there is on the ground floor. First floor kitchen, that's the second kitchen on the back overlooking the Mews, south facing as the sun coming in. Bedroom 7 is on the first floor, that's in the brick built red brick we saw on the first image. Thank you. And then up into the roof, those are 2 of the roof rooms. You see how steep the ceilings are. So although they're in the roof, nearly all of the floor space is providing good head height. And you can see reasonable size rooms, which are set out in the report in front of you. Everything meets the standards. Going back to the policy in terms of numbers of HMOs and community balanced in the area, we had an earlier slide. The one before that, please, David, sets it slightly wider. Thank you. Yesterday in briefing, members asked if we could have a slightly clearer one, so that the next slide is slightly clearer. Thank you, David. Thank you. So the report sets out the arrangement. This is a slightly unusual one because of the presence of flats within the 50 metres. So on the southwest corner, you can just about make out Park House. And I think I've got the aerial photograph of that either before or after this image. There it is. So there's Park House on the bottom left of your picture, that large 3-storey plus mansard roof in places flatted building that contains 37 flats and 2 HMOs, access at different points around it. And then David's pointing to the application premises just around the corner. So if we go back to the HMO image, the data count, thank you. The guidance we have on calculating the 50-metre figures accounts for this precisely this scenario, although it's unusual. I'll read it out to you. Where the 50-metre radius captures any part of a building containing flats, the planning authority shall endeavour to establish the number of flats that fall in part or whole within the 50-metre radius. If this proves impossible, then all properties inside of this building will be included. We've done both for you for completeness. So in 8.4, we first rehearsed the 50-metre radius. We've got existing HMOs, 5 number within the HMO, 50-metre radius. Top of the picture, you can see 2 pink dots on Osborne Road. There are 2 HMOs there. The rear of those premises are clipped by the 50-metre radius. To the centre right, we've got Netley Terrace with 2 further HMOs within the 50 metres. And bottom left, we have one of the flats in Park House that has its entrance within the 50 metres. Rehearsing that scenario and the extra proposed would be 7.23%, below your 10%. If, however, we felt we needed to apply the whole of Park House, for the reasons I've just given you in terms of the guidance, the figures alter slightly as set out in the report and would amount to 7.27%. So whichever way you slice it, it meets your guidance in terms of a mixed and balanced community. As usual, those are the 2 principal matters. We would consider that the report raises various other more detailed points that we can discuss should you wish. Otherwise, I don't believe we have any deputations today. Just for completeness, in the supplementary matters report, we've just noted that the description of development was changed to remove the external cycle store. That didn't follow through with the hyperlink in terms of description, but the report and hopefully this presentation does show that the external store was removed. Thank you.
Thank you much indeed, Mr. Turner. Just in terms of future reports, this report doesn't have floor plans in, which is always useful, and can we please make sure that they do appear in future ones, because they are very helpful. I don't think the new way of showing HMOs within a 50-metre radius is helpful. I think the older system was much clearer, because we're not particularly interested in something whether it's military or not. It's about whether it's an HMO or not, because that's what we're having to judge on. And being in lots of different colours is terribly nice on the website, but doesn't translate into something where it's reproduced in black, white and grey. But anyway, let's move along. We don't have any deputations either for or against, so colleagues, any questions to the officers? Councillor Mason.
The pictures that have been shown of the interior of the building at the moment show multiple beds in the various bedrooms. Can we be assured that this will be 11 persons in 11 rooms?
Mr. Turner?
Thank you, Councillor. Like last time, if you were last committee, we had a similar question upon Cosham High Street for that larger HMO there. We would leave that up to licensing. I think there are possibilities that they could occupy by more than 11 persons and still meet our standards, but to go into that is a whole area of hypothetical permutations and so on. So if members were concerned that there might be more occupation and they were concerned that licensing wouldn't control that, which we believe they would, but if members were concerned, they could attach a condition restricting the occupancy.
Okay, well, I think it's my understanding it's clear this is a planning application for 11 rooms with 11 people, and the title is very clear about what the application is for. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No comments? Councillor Atwell?
The committee is usually concerned about usable space, and the kitchens are tight. First floor kitchen's bang on the space standard, but without a floor plan,
Chair, could we actually see the floor plans up on the screen again? I think that would be useful. Just not the existing, but the proposed.
Well, we're just going to see them then. Thank you very much. I want to look at the usable space. Thank you, I missed it during the presentation.
So I think all of that kitchen area is of usable space. My understanding, Councillor Atwell, and we had a discussion about this at the briefing, was that we need to include the ground floor kitchen, the first floor kitchen, and the dining room and lounges, because it's all about communal space, and therefore you need to add. I think we add them together to try to come up with a number. Mr. Turner, am I right or wrong?
Well, it can be complicated because each site is different. We're quite used to seeing one communal room, one shared room, and that makes it a bit more straightforward. Sometimes we have a series of rooms, and here we've got a series of rooms, so it's not quite so straightforward, but I'll make it as simple as possible. There is one kitchen required of 11 square metres. That kitchen on the left hand you see provides that. It is 13 square metres, and then we have a second kitchen anyway on the first floor that David might just pop along to. Thank you. There it is, centre right on the back. So the ground floor kitchen, big enough on its own, and there is a second kitchen, so that more than meets the guidance. And then in terms of other living rooms, as a requirement for with rooms split out, a 14 square metre dining room and a 14 square metre lounge. We've got a living room, dining room of 26 there on the left-hand side, and on the right-hand side, a second living room of 14. So again, it meets and exceeds those standards.
Councillor Atwell, does that help?
Yes, and apologies, I wasn't able to be at briefing yesterday.
Oh, well.
I mean, the unusual configuration with the bedrooms off the living room. You went through that, I'm sure.
It is an unusual building and has had many uses of a not particularly helpful nature over the years. And Councillor Smythe.
I mean, the fact that there are several accesses to bedrooms and things off living rooms does mean that they would be very hard to convert into bedrooms later on.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions, colleagues? In terms of comments, I'm happy to propose this gets planning permission. My view is if they manage to make this work properly, it'll be a benefit to the community where it's been a real problem over many years. And if we can regularise this and get it sorted, and for 11 people in 11 bedrooms, that is a significantly lower use than they have been trying for in the past. So I'm happy to propose the officer recommendation on this. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mason. Is there any other proposal? Can I see? No. Can I see those in favour? Please show. Can I see those against? Please show. And those abstaining? Thank you very much. Okay, let's move along to Cardiff Road. David, is this you?
It is. Thank you, Chair.
We need to find a way in which you can get a computer and a microphone to work together.
Indeed. Thank you, Chair. So this is an application at Cardiff Road, 138 Cardiff Road in Nelson Ward. You'll see the location there adjacent to Stamshaw School. Members may recall seeing this application, an application at the site at the 23rd of October meeting where it was granted subject to conditions. So permission has been established for HMO on the site, and this is an application under Section 73 of the Act which seeks to vary conditions. So one thing just to be clear on in dealing with this application is that the original permission granted back in October still stands. So whatever happens today, the use of the property as a HMO and the principle of the use of the property in the area as a HMO is already established and can't be rescinded as part of this application. So in terms of the property, very typical terraced house of the area. You can see it's currently undergoing what's the word? Works to the property whilst we were at the site visit, so the works shown as part of the scheme were already underway.
It clearly was a very grey December morning.
No, this had been from a previous site visit, Chair. Whilst we're not reconsidering the principle of a HMO in the area, just for confirmation. This would be the first within the 50-metre radius of the site. That's 1 out of 41 properties in the area, so a proportion of 2.44%, so complies with your guidance. The existing floor plans are shown as there, so this is the same as the previous consent. So when the application was approved, a condition was imposed on this rear snug space here to retain just as communal use, as members were concerned it would be too small for a bedroom. And then a further condition limiting the numbers and also the use of a second floor bedroom, which I'll show you in a second, was also controlled. So the principal changes this time round is that the floor space has been amended. This is approved. This is the current proposal. So reduce the shower room to create a bedroom. You'll see from the report that bedroom meets the standard for a single occupancy with a larger living space, and also this reduced shower room still complies with your guidance. No changes on the first floor in terms of the scheme, and in the second floor, up in the loft, members were concerned about this use of this as a bedroom previously, and restricted that as a condition on the permission. So now it's proposed to use this as what they describe as a snug, but it's just communal living space, which will mean that in comparison, combined with the living dining area here at the front, occupying most of the ground floor, that will comply with your SPD policy as set out in the report. In terms of the elevations, they're unchanged. The works to the loft are permitted development and are clearly underway. In terms of the cross-section, so when the previous scheme was submitted, this was shown as a bedroom and was restricted under condition, and then now is proposed to be used as a communal living space. So just going back to the changes to the scheme, Chair, with the principle of the use of the property has been accepted. The amendments to the scheme allow us to increase the occupation to 6 bedrooms, as well as still complying with your guidance, and therefore we recommend the application for approval.
Thank you very much indeed. We have 3 people listed to come to speak, 2 councillors and Mr. Gooch. As I understand it, the councillors are at the end, so we go to Mr. Gooch first. Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Gooch, and you have 6 minutes.
Afternoon all. Just last time I was here was my first time at committee, and I proceeded to tell you exactly what was on the planning department's report, pretty much word for word. I now know not to do that again, so hopefully be a bit more respectful of your time. But I know you've all read the report in full. Just a couple of things to highlight from the planning department's report. Just to quote, find a proposed increase of 1 occupant as acceptable, and it will be in accordance with the relevant policies of the Portsmouth Plan and the objectives of the National Plan and Policy Framework. Portsmouth City Council HMO licensing team, to quote, are satisfied there is suitable living space for the proposed number of occupants. The licensing team have been out to inspect the property and they're extremely happy with it. There is a licence in place already, and I was talking to them about the proposal of an extra 6th room and their thoughts on that, and they said they would be happy to give a licence for that. And also the highways team, to quote, satisfied that the proposal for a single bedroom would not have a material impact upon the function of local highway network or its safety. One thing I want to highlight is when I was last in this committee, one of the committee members highlighted that Portsmouth do set some of the highest standards in the UK, and that's something that you're all very proud of. And if these standards are met, then planning decisions should be based on a presumption in favour of development. I feel, you know, from above, we've achieved that. But I did come away listening to the committee feedback last time, and I have gone back as described and amended the floor plan and structurally changed the property, which I want to highlight was at an additional cost to myself after all the works of just over £10,000. The current proposal amends the proposed layout in order to provide an additional bedroom to the ground floor and use the room shown as bedroom 6 on the approved scheme as a communal area. Bedroom 6 was not considered to provide adequate standard of accommodation due to ceiling heights. We've proposed this room to be a shared communal area, and in there's a TV, sofas and beanbags in there. But what we think is the benefit of this, it gives the residents or occupants a place to relax away from generally the kitchen area, which means they can relax in peace away from, if people, the noise of cooking, the smells of cooking. And it also means that occupants are likely to be split across the floors. I think that's a good thing, meaning noise will likely to be reduced both inside the house and for the benefit of surrounding neighbours as well. And then moving the bedroom to the original communal area, it surpasses any issues with head heights, but also we've made the room a lot bigger, giving the occupant a lot more living space of nearly an additional 2.5 metres squared. So we're hitting just under 10 metres squared. And we've achieved this by turning the bathroom into a shower room, which allowed us to maintain the total amount of showers in the property, whilst not reducing any washing facilities, but whilst also gaining additional bedroom space. And just to finish, I want to highlight that we have taken an empty property within the ward, taken it back to literal brick, to an extremely high specification, including full rewire, new plumbing and heating, automatic lights, insulated walls, and fitted new double glazing, which adds to both the soundproofing and thermal efficiency. And it's increased the energy efficiency of the property from a rating of an E to a rating of a C. No expense has been spared, with a total refurbishment and fit-out cost of totaling $225,000, and then on top of that purchase cost as well, complying with all licensing and building regs, which has given the local area a far superior property, which went there before and passes all required standards set by this committee. Hopefully, with what I've said, along with the planner's report, you'll take this all into consideration for approval, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much indeed. We have two councillors on the list to speak. Councillor Swan is not here. Councillor Hunt, you are.
All right, members. Thank you very much. Thank you to Mr. Gooch too. One thing I will make very clear is there's no question whatsoever that an enormous amount of money has been put into buildings by people who are buying up redundant or falling down properties that need investment. So that part of it is good, and I very much welcome the investment into buildings right across Portsmouth in this way. Every case has to be judged on its individual merits. Last time, members, you saw fit to restrict this to 5 occupants. Mr. Gooch has gone away, and good for him, and he's come back again with a proposal that seeks to change a snarg, which has been described to you by the planning officers, into a bedroom, and that has been achieved. And I'm sure, no doubt, that you will talk about this presently. That has been achieved by reducing the size of the SHWR room. It's so small you can't even fit shower on it on the picture, but I'm just being poetic there. However, it is smaller than it was before, so that is a diminution of the facilities already, amenities for intended occupiers, and is squeezing in another bedroom, which is bedroom 1. Now, I think you will want to talk about this as you go through your debate, because the poor old occupant of bedroom 1 is going to have a shower room by his or her head, feet, goodness knows what. They're going to have 5 or 6 people going out on shift work all times of the day and night, coming into that shower room to wash, to shave, to have all the other things that you do in the shower room done there and then. And that person in shower room is going to, in that bedroom 1, is going to hear all of that day in and day out. I would argue that I would not wish to live in that in that bedroom in that way. And if I couldn't bear to live there, and I'm a really tolerant person, that I don't think any of us would want to live in that room with all that noise. Basically, it's in their room. It literally is in their room. It's the corridor. You've got the corridor there, which I'm sure some of you will notice is quite long, and isn't really usable space in any way, shape or form, but it's probably been added into the calculations, because we know as long as the calculations fit and the maths is done, the actual quality of life for the person doesn't matter. And that's where we've gone with this committee. That's where we've gone with our considerations. As long as the numbers are there and the area space fits in the room, it doesn't matter about the poor sod that's got to live in there. All that happens is that the numbers add up. Well, you are more subjective than that. You are entitled to be subjective, and you're entitled to say no if you think that the amenities of the intended residential occupier will be adversely impacted by the configuration of the layout of the premises. And in this case, I would strongly urge you to look at that matter. Whether or not it comes back again later on for another person to go up in the room that's being amended in a different way, you can't consider today. I know that. However, we will have to wait and see. Now, I'm most grateful to Mr. Gooch, as I say, for investing money into this property, but I am not willing to accept, as the ward councillor representing the person that might live in that bedroom, that their lives should be blighted by constant noise and people flushing the loo, having a shower, and doing all the sorts of other things that people do in a shower room. So there you are. I've made my case strongly, and I hope that you will debate it, and I hope that you will decide that this is not an appropriate. It's cramming him in, frankly. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Any questions to the officers? Councillor Smythe.
I've got two questions. One of them linked to Councillor Hunt's comments. This page 25, where the plans are showed, I think is misleading because it says approved floor plans. In fact, they were conditionally approved and bedroom 5 wasn't approved. And I think the report should probably be corrected or a minute on that effect, because if it would continue to be confusing to an inspector or somebody else who was... that's on top of page 25. Figure 2, it says approved floor plans.
Yep.
They were conditionally approved, and one of the conditions was taking out bedroom 5 and making it, it was not acceptable to us. Is that correct? That's my question.
David?
Yes, that's correct, but the plan isn't misleading. That is the approved plan, and also it's clear from the report that the condition was imposed which restricted its use, Chair.
Okay, I apologise, but it confused me for a little while. The second question is about the snug and the new bedroom. Would it be possible to put a condition on that the bathroom should be rearranged to mean that this wasn't a shared shower room but an ensuite for bedroom 1, in which case they alone would be responsible for the noises emanating from that room? And would that be something we could put a condition on? And would it, if we did, would the plans still adhere with what we required? Would there be sufficient lavatory and ablutions in the house or not? I don't know.
So, Chair, just a couple of points and picking up on comments previously made. So, as I understand the guidance, and it's set out in the report, there needs to be a set number of bathrooms or separate WCs within the property in order to comply with the guidance and the licensing. So I don't believe we would be in a position to restrict that. I can't say in any way, shape or form that it is harmful for a bedroom to be next to a bathroom. And just to highlight the point, Chair, this is the approved first floor where we have a bathroom between 2 bedrooms here. Also on to the top floor, we have a WC next to this bedroom here as well. It's a very common relationship and layout in all of the properties across the city, and we would not be able to suggest that that was in any way harmful. Also, just to highlight the point that the occupiers on this floor would have access to this bathroom, and the occupiers at the top floor with the WC as well. So their need to go down and use that bottom shower room would be lesser anyway, particularly if they're on the top floor.
Okay, any other questions, colleagues? No? Councillor Candlish, you are late, but do you wish to ask a question?
I'm sorry, Chair, because that's the previous two. I've also not managed to get my question in time because I've been hovering rather than pressing the button.
Be demonstrative. What is your question, Councillor Candlish?
So, having listened to the debate, I was actually going to look at the other bathrooms to see how many showers there are within the property.
I don't think that's something we're allowed to debate in terms of showers or baths. I think it just has to... David, can you advise?
Yes, this is in the report, Chair. Can you give me 2 seconds and I'll direct you to the paragraph.
I think I can see, but I just took a moment to look. So it looks like on the proposed first floor, there is not a shower. And there definitely isn't one on the upper
There may
floor.
be a shower over the bath, which is what most people have across the... And the applicant is nodding to say that that is the case at this property, Councillor Candlish.
It is. The position is illuminated. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can we now move on to proposals, the comments? I'm happy to propose the officer recommendation. It seems to me that the applicant has listened to what we said at the last meeting and has varied the building to so that top bedroom is not going to be used as a bedroom, it will be used as a communal room, but then he's come up with something that fits within the criteria set down by the council to expand the bottom bedroom. So I'm happy to propose officer recommendation in this case. Second, Councillor Vallely. Are there any other proposals? Okay, can I see those in favour? Please show. Those against, please show. Now, Councillor Adair, were you for, against, or both? Okay, shall we start all this again then? Let's be clear and simple. Can those people in favour please show? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against, please show. And those abstaining, please show. Okay, planning permission is granted. Thank you. Okay, let's move along to Derby Road, which is on page 35 of this report, of the papers.
Thank you, Chairman. We have an application at 41 Derby Road for a change of use from a 5-bedroom, 5-person house in multiple occupation to a 7-bed, 7-person house in multiple occupation with alterations, including a rear gable extension with roof light. This is a corner property with Grange Road running north-south next to it, typical of Portsmouth, with the front door on the side, you'll see in a minute, and a large bay window on the front. Could we go back one, please, David? Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. At the rear, you can see it probably, well, both images, you can see a small area edged in blue, which is a small outdoor yard. And then to the south of that, thank you, is a garage. We'll see that in some photos. The property is already an HMO across the first and second floors, a 5-bed, 5-person, and there was already a ground floor flat at the rear of the ground floor. And that area edged in blue is effectively the ground floor flats outdoor area. We're up in Nelson Ward, up in Stamshaw, and this has come to the committee at the request of Councillor Vernon Jackson concerning the increase in occupancy question. The street scene from Derby Road, so this is the front stroke north elevation. The bay windows there. Note the rooms on the front of the house are double width, full width, I should say. There's no narrowing caused by the hallway like next door. So it's a wide property. And I mention that now because those rooms are proposed for subdivision. The existing first floor is already subdivided at the bay window in the front. You can't see it there because it's behind the mullion and the tree. You'll see in a moment, but I'm mentioning it now while you see the photograph. So the two bay windows, front and bottom, will be subdivided exactly in the middle, and a new vertical stone mullion will be placed to hide the dividing wall, the party wall behind. And we've got a condition on that attached in the event of a consent to make sure we get a good quality replacement. It's my view that if done well, and that condition will require it, you wouldn't really notice it in the street with so much visual activity and architecture going on. And then on the right-hand side of the bays, we would have two new windows. Go back one, please, David, sorry. Yeah, so between the bay windows, you can see the gutter, the downpipe, and just there on the left-hand side, both top and bottom, there'll be an extra window proposed there. You'll see that in the elevations shortly. Going round onto the side street, thank you, there we are. So that's the front door hiding behind the van there. That takes you up into the HMO existing. Note the expanse of brick wall on the right-hand side there. You'll see in a minute the insertion of two new windows there as well, serving the subdivided front bay rooms. Note the roof has, it's hard to see really there, but there's a hipped roof front, back and side. The roof extension is proposed to take the rear hip out to a gable, but it's, as you can see from here, it'd be quite hard to discern in the street, not particularly voluminous, but it enables the better use of the loft space. The ground floor flat, you can see the sort of conservatory, lean-to conservatory, which is part of the ground floor flat. And then, okay, that's the premises. I think if I take you to the next slide, which deals with HMOs. First of all, this is an unusual application in that we've got the increased intensity of 2 persons proposed, and so in the report we rehearse that argument. In this instance, officers believe that doesn't require planning permission, the increase of 2, and members will go on to decide your opinion on that matter. But because of the external alterations, the new windows I've mentioned, front and side, the subdivided bay window and the rear roof, these are all physical alterations that need planning consent and need to be controlled. So notwithstanding that the increase in occupancy element doesn't require consent in officer's opinion, we do end up with a recommendation for a conditional permission because there's one application and it includes elements that do need permission, being the physical changes. With respect to the policy for a mixed and balanced community, it is already an HMO. It was granted a lawful development certificate last year to confirm that. And going back to the issue of diagrams and so on, here you have some extra big stars employed by the case officer to helpfully highlight the 4 existing HMOs, including the application premises there on the corner. So the existing percentage is 6.89. That wouldn't change because it's already an HMO. Moving on to the adequacy of accommodation. These are the physical changes. You can see, therefore, on the left-hand side, you've got the front elevation on the top with the bay window, and you can discern the 2 extra windows to the right of the bays and the subdivision of the bay. And then in the side elevation, you can see the 2 extra windows on the bottom proposed. And then the rear roof, you can see, goes from a hip above to a gable that comes out to give that little bit of extra volume, which you can also see in the rear elevation. And that's also lit by a small window there. Thank you, David. There's just more detail on the proposed subdivision of the front bay and the 2 extra windows, controlled by condition if consented. Thank you. Again, more details of the external changes there. Thank you. Internally, the property, hatched blue is the rear ground floor flat. No change there. With respect to the 5-person, 5-bedroom HMO, the rest of the premises would, I think, be pretty much remodelled internally, and the roof set up with the relatively small volume roof gable to the rear to enable the extra accommodation as shown on the next slide. Thank you, David. So taking you through from floor to floor, you come in on the ground floor, the side door. If you turn right, you've got bedrooms 6 and 7 with en suites, and you can see the subdivision there and the extra windows. Below the number 7 is the extra window in the front there, and on the left-hand side for bedroom 6 is a side window, as well as the bay window, half the bay window. Upstairs, you can turn into bedrooms 3 and 4 above, the same pattern, to the rear bedroom 5 with ensuite, and then into the rear wing, which has the kitchen, and then opening out into the shared dining kitchen, living space, and then 2 bedrooms in the roof with the ceiling height accounted for in the calculations, all ensuite rooms. So the table sets out that the bedroom sizes required are 6.51. All of these bedrooms are way beyond that, at nearly 11 up to 19.5 square metres, so very good sized bedrooms along with the en-suites. The combined living space should be 34 metres squared. It is 37.1 with a reasonable configuration and position in the property, so we're happy that the property will provide suitable accommodation for the occupiers. Next slide. Thank you, David. Here are the details. So at the rear, the ground floor flat has its retained little yard there, which also gives privacy for any windows it's got at the ground floor. The second half of the rear element there is currently a garage. We'll see in a moment, but that would be removed, a bike store put in, and that would become a small outdoor space for the occupiers of the HMO. Better than nothing. They'd have to go out the front door along the street and sit in there, should they want to sit there with a cup of coffee and get a bit of sun or whatever on a day there, daylight, fresh air. We think that's better than nothing. So the applicant's made an effort to provide what can be provided for both the ground floor flat and the proposed HMO. Thank you. And the next slide. These are existing photos of the existing premises, of course, and because of the significant remodelling proposed, almost all of this will change almost completely. So it just really shows you what the existing looks like rather than the proposed. Each annotation explains this is an existing bedroom and it would become remodelled or extended and joined and to become another bedroom. So we've included these for completeness, but it's hard to discern from these photos what the premises would look and feel like, but you've got the floor plans to do that instead. Thank you, David. There's, lastly, on the right-hand side, you can see the existing garage, which would be removed, and that would become an outdoor small yard and bike store for the proposed HMO. I think those are the main points. We do have some objections, that's right, including from Councillor Swan. Set out in your report. Lastly, just for completeness, just some revised plans we had just for dealing with the details of the windows have come in, so we've just set out in the supplementary matters report those revisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, any... Oh no, so let's go through, not run away ourselves. Carrie-Anne Wells, welcome, and you have 6 minutes, as always.
Thank you very much. So 41 Derby Road, in my opinion, is a prime example of an existing HMO requiring substantial upgrading. This property requires a complete overhaul to increase the living standard for the occupants. The sanitary provision in the current property is below minimum provision, with 4 of the bedrooms sharing a bathroom. One of the bedrooms are undersized, it's just 6.57 square metres. The officer's made note within his report about the divided bedrooms and changed the window detail in the proposed drawings. And as noted, the existing first floor bedrooms have already been separated internally. We are proposing this is separated properly, splitting the central windows into 2 panes to provide a much more attractive finish to the outside elevations and ensuring the internal wall is fully compliant with current building regulations. Whilst I do appreciate this will result in a change to the fenestration arrangement, I think it's important to stress the change has already been made on the first floor, with the wall ending at the current window. This internal change did not require planning permission, and in my opinion, the proposed change will result in a much more permanent, attractive finish, while still providing 2 good-sized ensuite bedrooms with a much more usable shaped bedrooms than the existing arrangement allows. The current communal area is also very small at just 13.3 for the current 5 occupants, and the new proposed communal area at 37.1 is in excess of requirement. The owner is looking to fully upgrade the property and to comply with the current building regs, which will benefit both the tenants and the neighbouring property in terms of thermal upgrade and sound reduction. Again, as the officers noted, the property does not have any direct access to the proposed garden area and cycle store, but the existing HMO property does not benefit from any outdoor space at all. The proposed plans, however, look to provide a much needed cycle store and a small outdoor area for the tenants. Any tenants currently with cycles have to be stored within their own bedrooms, so direct side access to a weatherproof cycle store will be an improvement on the current arrangement. The proposed works look to ensure all the bedrooms are large and all benefit from an ensuite room with a large open plan communal area. The owner, like I said, is keen to ensure the property will provide a high standard spacious property for tenants. It's fully compliant with policy PCS 17, PCS 20 and PCS 23 of the local plan. This is an existing HMO, again, I'll bleat on about it, which is in need of upgrade, and I really believe that this committee all have that same ethos at heart. If there's poor HMO out there, then I think owners should be sort of commended for being able to spend this type of money on the properties and upgrading them. And I think the increase of the 2 occupants is a small offset in terms of what this property will provide. I trust you support the officer recommendation for approval today. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Lee Hunt.
Well, on this occasion, I have to disagree with Karen about the windows in particular. I fail to understand why. Yeah, I understand why things are happening, because the National Planning Policy Framework is silent on HMOs, and this land use already is as an HMO. But I don't know why we have to see a property in North End, another property in North End, carved up, which no longer respects the appearance of the building on the outside. These sorts of properties are notable with their large sash windows. We see Christmas trees in them as we go by. But now we're proposing to split that up, or the proposal is to split that up and install 2 smaller windows. This is totally alien to the streetscape. I have no problem at all with the side window in bedroom 6 and at bedroom 3. That makes a lot of sense, quite frankly, on that large blank wall, which has been described by the officer. No problem with that at all. Indeed, probably it would have been better to have them, but of course in Victorian times you didn't have windows because you wanted to keep the heat in. But if you look at 3 and 4 and 6 and 7, and you see the split down the middle, we never used to like that, splitting down bay windows, but it's acceptable nowadays because the maths add up. And the floor space is enough for 1 or 2 people or whatever, but it's those windows. Then if you're circling with tiny little windows. Now, to make it happen at 7 and 4, not only do you have a smaller window pane put into a window that's been there for a century or more, that adds to the attractiveness of the streetscape, which is important. We're also being asked to allow, just in the side, another window pane. At 4 to the right and at 7 on the right-hand side. On paper, might look fine. It might be acceptable. But when you go into the street after that, what it says loud and clear is that this is bedsit land. And that is what is happening by these sorts of changes in these large houses. When cramming people in, we are not only, and I accept that they can be put in there, and everybody needs a roof over their head. I really accept that. People want somewhere to live, and I know Councillor Vallely is very clear on that. What I will not accept in North End is the situation that we have in Margate Road and St Andrews Road and St David's Road, is houses changed so much that the area begins to look run down. And that is the trouble with making these external alterations, which are key to this application today. I'm not arguing about the HMO use although it still is an overdevelopment. I'm arguing that if you allow these injurious changes to the fabric of the larger houses in North End, you will change the character and the appearance of the streets in North End, which is a nice residential area. Now, I will campaign on that. I will fight it and fight it and fight it, because it's not fair that North End should see these sorts of changes to these large homes in this way. It is wrong. It will look ugly. It will have an adverse impact on the streetscape, and I won't accept it. It should stop. It's not fair on the residents around about, and it will create the impression of a rundown area. You may not agree with me, but I think that, and I think a whole bunch of residents do too, and I'm here to represent those residents, and it's going to look ugly, and it's going to have an adverse impact on the street scene, and I urge you to reject these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Colleagues, any questions to the officers on this application? Councillor Candlish.
Can we see the picture, the streetscape picture, straight on again, please?
See, that's not hugely helpful because there's a tree in the way. But if you look at the next door house, it's a line down the middle of the bay and an additional window where on the next door house there's a window and a door at lower level. But the thing that would set it apart is that there's, down the middle of that bay window, there would be a division. Okay?
Thank you.
Councillor Mason?
That was my question.
Excellent. Councillor Atwell?
Are the changes, Councillor Hunt spoke about the changes to appearance, a material consideration for us?
Simon? I think the answer to that is yes.
Indeed.
Which would be?
The answer to that is yes, it is a material consideration. Therefore, it should be considered. Okay?
Toby, you misled the committee. I'm sorry. There are new windows proposed in the brickwork at 7 and 4.
That wasn't the question. So, colleagues, okay, any other questions? No? Okay. Comments? Proposals? Councillor Atwell, I see you loitering.
Well, I mean, I tend to agree with Councillor Hunt about the changes to appearance, changing the experience people have of these roads. So I think that's where I am. I'm going to listen to see if anybody else might be thinking similarly, but it's a material consideration, so we are able to refuse on those grounds.
So is that the divide of the bay window, the addition of the window on the side, or the addition of all of it? Okay.
Changes the appearance and experience.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Vallely?
Is there a precedence for dividing windows in the road already?
There is within that property already. On the first floor, I think, is that correct?
The room is divided, but where the internal wall meets the window, it's behind an existing mullion, so you can't see it in the same way. The window wouldn't be divided, isn't divided, sorry.
Sorry, I still don't quite understand that, and I don't know my mullions from my onions.
Okay. There is a useful representation of what the front would look like, which I'm sure Mr. Turner could. There we are.
Thank you. Yeah. So the mullions are the vertical divides within a window. So the stone columns effectively there. Thank you. That's a mullion. So you'll be inserting a new thinner stone or reconstituted stone mullion there. As mentioned, and it's in the report, we've asked for details of that to make sure it is done well. That would hide the dividing wall inserted into the room. It's a matter of opinion. Councillor Hunt has given his opinion very clearly. Yes, you would lose the attractiveness of the one large pane, but as I said earlier, done well, and we have a condition to ensure it's done well. I personally don't think that would be particularly noticeable in the street. As you're walking down the street, there's a lot of activity, people, cars, trees, architecture on all the houses, very nice architecture on the original houses. So I don't think that would amount to a reason for refuse planning permission.
Okay, but the committee may have a different view. Councillor Smythe.
Just to pick up on that point, the existing rooms 3 and 4 are a completely different internal arrangement. There's an alignment between rooms 6 and 7 and 3 and 4 on the proposed plans, which show the new wall is going down the middle of the two. Don't forget this is a bay window, so it's going down the middle of the two front panes, with the other 2 panes being returns. Given that this building is already quite a lot wider than the next door, I think the helpful thing to look at is to see it within the row of the houses next door and so forth. It's much bigger in many ways because there isn't a window there at the moment. Yes, that's it. So the new one is going directly down the middle. It's different from that proposal, which is. I do think it is a change, but I don't think it's. Are we on comments or is it all questions?
We are on comments.
For me, that's not a breaking point. I think if it's done well, and that is a big condition, it would provide, in fact, better accommodation than there is there.
Okay, Councillor Candlish.
I think we have to look at this in the round. So I think we are definitely seeing an improvement for the residents inside, the ensuite showers and the upgrading of the property. I think the additional windows are good news. I disagree slightly. I think we have to accept there is to me, a small negative about splitting the window through the middle, however beautifully the mullion is inserted. However, I don't think it is a major negative, and to me, overall, none of us here are entirely comfortable with the densification that is going on in our city and the number of additional bedrooms that are being squeezed into properties. But given the strengthened guidance in the NPPF proposal that requires us to have a strong reason to object, I think that this will be, over a period of time, an acceptable building within the general community. I can't see a reason to say no.
Okay, Councillor Adair.
I find myself totally in agreement with Councillor Hunt, as you might expect. These houses are unique. We are not building houses of this nature anymore. They are a bygone age. We are not going to get any more. And here we are, the ones we've got, we're effectively desecrating. The bay windows are very attractive. I appreciate that North End is probably not the most pleasing area in the world, but we've got some lovely houses. And here we are, effectively desecrating them. We're cutting the bay windows in half. We're putting windows in where windows were never designed to be. We're putting windows on the side where they were never designed to be. And you've only got to look at the symmetry. The next door house is going to look totally out of symmetry with this property. It's a complete desecration. I think for that reason, we should refuse this. Thank you.
Okay, folks. I don't have a proposal on the table.
I propose a refusal.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Atwell. Thank you. I'm happy to propose the officer recommendation on it. Planning officer, you need a reason for the refusal?
Yes, please, if you're going to have
Councillor Adair, what is your formal reason for approval?
It's the way it's been done. It's going to desecrate this beautiful old house, and it's going to never be restored to the way it was. So I think it's the street scene, the amenity, the enjoyment of the street by the people who live in that area.
So that's PCS 23 residential amenity, is that correct?
I'm struggling to see why that's an amenity.
Okay, sorry, then tell me.
Is it a character appearance?
Yes.
Well, it's certainly going to change the character of the building. It's never going to look the same again, is it, after this?
The property will be altered as part of the scheme. The property's been altered clearly over time since it was constructed 130, 40 years ago. What is the harm of inserting those windows,
Well, I think
Chair?
the councillor's been very clear. It's just which policy that you think it would sit under.
The policy is PCS 23, but I'm struggling to understand what the harm is of inserting the windows, Chair.
Councillor Adair, would you like to explain to David?
I think it's quite clear. You know, we've got a lovely old house that's unique. As I said before, we're not going to build houses of this nature again. And here we are effectively doing something to it, which is totally going to change its character forever. So I don't see in a few years' time we're going to be asking to restore it to the way it was. Once it's done forever. And it's going to look totally out of symmetry with the adjoining house, which has maintained the bay window.
Okay, so I think it's contrary to PCS 23 and it's changing the character of the external appearance of this building. Okay. And okay, then I'm going to propose officer recommendation to grant approval. Seconded by Councillor Smythe. So we do the first proposal first. Those in favour of refusal, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those against, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Therefore, that falls. In terms then the second proposal was to grant planning permission according to the officer recommendation. All those in favour, please show. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those against, please show. That's 4. So planning permission is granted. Okay. Thank you very much indeed. Next application is a rerun of one that we have had before at Elm Grove, 60A Elm Grove, which is the siting of a shipping container and erection of a fence. This is a resubmission. We made a decision on this at some time ago to say no to this, but it has come back because this application has been resubmitted. David.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yes, as described, this is a resubmission following refusal of an application back in April, I think, April of 24 by the Planning Committee for the continued siting of the shipping container at the rear of its commercial premises and proposals to screen that with fencing behind. So this is a site here on Elm Grove in a part of commercial shopping parade. Funnily enough, we're on the same road as we were with the first item today on the junction of Woodpath. So the property is here and the site is to the rear of the commercial premises. So here's an aerial view of the site. So as you can see, you've got a very typical commercial area along Elm Grove with commercial units at the ground floor, accommodation above, and then the rear, very much the service yard, back of house area to the rear of these commercial units. The shipping container is this one here, and you'll note that there are a number of other containers which you'll also see within the photos of the site. Just to confirm a point in your update sheet, your SMAT, that the container at number 52, which is this one here, well, my colleagues in the enforcement section have investigated that particular one, but that had been in situ for more than 4 years, and therefore was lawful by the passage of time, and therefore no enforcement action could be taken against that, so that is lawful. So this is the unit concern. So the rear of the commercial unit, you can see there's very much this sort of back of house character that you would expect with bins and the storage unit. This adjacent is to the rear of number 62. So that does have approval subject to condition to screen that with fencing. When the application was considered back in April, the report indicated that no weight should be attached to that approval on the adjacent site. I do want to qualify that advice a little bit. The council does need to show that it acts in a fair and consistent manner in applying its policies. Whilst approval of one scheme in one part of the city provides no precedent for an approval in another part, where you've got directly comparable schemes, which in this case you've got adjacent sites, and this particular unit is more prominent, then the council does need to show that it applies its policies and it makes its decisions consistently. So just some more views of it, and then just highlighting bottom right, how there is a space where this roof over from the back links onto the unit, provides space to the rear of the unit to screen bins, etc. So in terms of the layout, this is the applicant's indicated that they own adjacent property, and then their ownership extends over the access into the service yard, rear roof here, and the shipping container here. So this is how it appears at the moment, with the shipping container in full view from the back, and this is the current proposal. So this has been amended since a previous refusal, so the applicant has added this trellis to the proposed fence and some landscaping, which will make it higher, and will also provide some further screening. So you'll only see this part of the shipping container just above the fence, and there's the top of the fence, and so that part would be visible. And just for confirmation, this is the scheme approved adjacent at number 62, which agreed fencing enclosing the site, again, similar height, so you'd see partly the unit above. It's evident that the applicant hasn't implemented this consent yet. They haven't built that fence because we've been out in the last couple of days to take the photos, but that is the scheme that was approved on the adjacent site, which is on the more prominent corner as you come onto Woodpath. So for the reasons set out in the report, we're satisfied that this provides adequate screening for the unit. The character of the area is very much as we would expect to the rear of commercial premises, and this will provide an improvement which will screen the unit, and we're happy to recommend it for approval, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We have no deputations or call-ins on this issue, so we move straight to questions from members of the committee. I've got Councillor Mason and Councillor Smythe. So Councillor Mason.
In your presentation, you referred to the ownership of the service yard. I have been shown the deeds of number 2 Woodpath, which indicate that the white surfaced 9-foot wide access road to the back, the easement, is actually in the ownership of number 2 Woodpath. Would you please comment on that?
So, Chair, it's not material to your consideration today because the proposals don't actually affect the use of that access across the path. If I can go back to the layout. So, in relation to that particular. Unless we haven't been provided with that information to dispute the red line drawn by the applicant, unless we're given information to the contrary, we will take that on good faith because it's an offence to complete Certificate A incorrectly. Nonetheless, the proposals don't affect the use of that access into the rear service yard, so the proposals would not affect that. So and also it may be a situation where they have a right of way rather than an ownership, or one or the other, but ultimately the access route in is not affected by the proposals. Thank you, Chair.
In order to clarify that, can we write into this a condition that the fence shall not impinge upon the existing right-of-way?
So, Chair, the fence will be in the position that it's shown on the plan. So, if we grant the consent, it'll be where it's shown. So, it can't be sited anywhere else.
The plans are not absolutely clear on where that fence will be, and therefore I would request that we clarify the matter by indicating that it shall not impinge upon the right-of-way.
Okay, Councillor Smythe?
I was going to make a similar question, and I would agree with that condition being necessary, because it's, in fact, I went down there this morning and it's an absolute mess. We refused a previous scheme on the grounds of inadequate refuse collection situation, and the bins are not being located within the enclosed fence area, or the area that would be an enclosed fenced area, and in fact the bin situation all the way up and down the backs of those properties is dire. Well, my question is, how would we first of all enforce the situation about adequate bin storage, which it isn't at the moment, and it looks terrible. In fact, it's not even in the bin, some of the rubbish. And the second thing is, why aren't we enforcing against the non-compliance of the condition we put on the bin, the
one at the back of House.
the one at the back of number 62?
Yeah.
Because frankly, if that had been done, and I would have seen it, I would probably think this is probably good. And I do understand their need for storage space, and it is a commercial area we want to support, but it looks a disgrace at the moment. So my question is, how can we ensure that this is actually done and quickly, and that the bin situation is resolved? And until that, I've got some sort of condition that makes that going to happen quickly, I'm not minded to approve it.
So I think there's an issue about the enforcement action about the one at House. David, can you tell us what enforcement action is taking place?
So, having granted the consent, if they don't implement the planning permission, then the storage container remains unlawful. So, it's incumbent on them, if they want to keep it, to implement that planning consent. That would be my understanding of the permission. So, if they don't implement, they run the risk, without checking back on the terms of the consent. That's a risk for them, potentially.
So the number, David, said it was 23, so that's 2 years ago. So not a 24 one, it was a 23 one. So I just think we would expect enforcement action to happen within a sensible time.
Yes, we would ordinarily try to protect ourselves against the situation that's happened at 52, where it's become lawful area. Yeah.
Thank you. The other issue is whether with the plans that have come forward for this one, whether the fence will be built on land in the ownership or control of the applicants, or in the ownership and control of number 2 Woodpath. And I'm not, at the moment, hearing certainty about whose ownership and control the land would be.
So that's not a matter for your merits of the planning decision. If the fence isn't on land that they own, then they would need the landowner's permission to erect the fence in that location. So if we grant planning permission, we grant planning permission on the basis of the plans. Plans, scale plans, their constructional drawings. You can have confidence that they show a fence in a position that will then have to be constructed there. If they build the fence somewhere else, the scheme's unlawful and they haven't implemented the consent properly. So you do have to base a decision on the basis of the plans that you've got, and it would only grant the fence in that location. If that affects any private rights, that's a separate matter for the applicant.
I'm kind of wondering whether to suggest, because I think there is some confusion here, whether to defer this to be able to get an answer about whose land it's actually going to go on. But again, I'll be guided by the committee.
Chair, can I just come in? That would not be a proper planning reason to defer the application. The application is that before you, land ownership is not relevant to the planning consideration. So to defer it for that reason, it wouldn't be a good one.
Okay, so yes, well, I think Councillor Smythe, I agree with you. The rubbish looks awful down there, and I think the potential is that if somebody puts fencing up in a proper way, it'll make it a lot neater and tidier. But I just think there may be some confusion. Anyway, Councillor Candlish.
So I've got 2 questions. So the first one I think is being answered, which is we don't currently know what the period under which the previous applicant was expected to put the fence up.
It's on a different site.
different...
But the relevance to this one is, if it is an extended period of years, we might want to, I would ask the question whether we could put it a condition that it has to be done in a quicker period of time. That's the reason I'm asking what it was on the private one. And my second question is, I would like to look at the pictures of the proposed fence, not so much for the trellis and plants dangling down from it, but where the one where I would look to see where I would be taking the rubbish out from through this fence that they are proposing to build. Because on the previous application, I believe there was like a door or something that would come out from. Is here the intent that the rubbish would come out of the side? I don't understand how it comes out of the back.
No.
And if I don't understand that, that gives me a concern that it will not be stacked properly, or that it will be stacked at the front of the trellis that we can see, giving us the same problem as we have now, which I think many of us think the fence will help resolve, but simply have moved that problem another 2 metres into the driveway.
Right, number of points there. So that's the space, Chair, between the side of the fence and the rear of the property. So if I take you back to this picture, so in effect that's the back door of the premises, and then the fence does not come all the way up to the wall there. There's a gap. There's a gap between the rear. That's the rear elevation. That's gone. So space within there to store bins, etc. Your point about completion of the fence, yes, so that's deliberately in the report as a condition to be done in 6 months, and that is condition...
Okay.
It's in there, I know it's in there. 3, condition 3.
Okay.
So we cover that. The permission on the adjacent site does not, having a look at it, does not have a time frame for implementing it, but it's simply the scheme is for the installation of a fence at rear boundary and the respective siting of the storage containers. So what we're trying to do is provide a greater level of control for this application, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Smythe.
Can we put a condition on about bin storage? Because it's either encroaching on the existing right-of-way, which I understand isn't our business at this moment, or it's out of control. And the whole thing is unacceptable whilst bin storage is as it is. And certainly as it was this morning, I encourage you to go and have a look.
Well,
so I'd like a condition, if I was to approve this, I would like to see a condition on bin storage.
So I think that would clearly fit within PCS 23 in terms of residential amenity. Having bins strewn all over the place, smelly and horrible, is clearly detrimental to the community benefit of residents who live very, very close. Well, that I think we are being advised is not our job, because land ownership is not within our purview. But I think,
I'm not talking about the.
No. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Chair, so if I've understood correctly, if we had a condition that required bins to be stored under the canopy area, which would be approved, so that's the canopy area that sits over the rear and links on to the storage container, yes, we could do that. I've got a question mark about our ability to enforce it, but I don't think it's an unreasonable condition. Chair.
That's great.
So refuse, and I think, knowing what's down that back area, it's also beer barrels. Okay.
Yes, the properties are bakers, I understand, so I don't think the beer barrels would be theirs, Chair.
All right. Okay, colleagues, do we have a proposal? So, Councillor Smythe. Yeah, can you put your microphone on?
I'm happy to propose this, subject to a really quite strict condition about the bin storage must be off the right-of-way.
Yeah, and the 6 months to get it done.
And the 6 months to get it on, it's all here.
Yeah.
But I would also like, as a note to the minutes, to really ask for the enforcement of the condition on number 62, which is our precedent, to be taken very seriously.
Yeah, I think we probably can't link that to this planning application, but I think we can. But I think the message has got loud and clear to David that we expect the enforcement team to be getting on with number 62. Okay, I'm happy to second Councillor Smythe's proposal. Are there any other proposals? No. Okay. Can I see those in favour? Please show. Those against, there can't be any, no, and those against, please show, and those abstaining, thank you very much. Okay, so planning permission for that is granted. Our last application is, Mr Walker, thank you very much indeed for your patience with us today. Will be 37 Henderson Road, and this is a slightly unusual thing that is coming our way. Far away with this proposal.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a certificate of lawful development at 37 Henderson Road. It's for the proposed use of an HMO for 7 persons in 7 bedrooms. Just to locate you, Henderson Road, for those who don't know, is further east of Highland Road. So when you get to the end of Highland Road at the eastern end and you turn north, that mini roundabout up to Milton, if you carry straight on, that's Henderson Road that takes you along to Eastney. This is at the western end of Henderson Road, just near that junction, one house in. Indeed, as Councillor Vernon Jackson has just said, this is not a planning application, it's an application for a certificate of lawfulness. So asking for an increase in occupancy of 1 person from the current 6 to a proposed 7. So as the report set out, it got planning permission late 2023 at committee for the change of use from Class C3 dwelling house to a flexible C3 or C4 use. That has been implemented as a C4 use, and the spare room, which was labelled a study up in the rear wing at the top floor, they're now asking or proposing that its occupation by a 7th person would not require planning permission because of a lack of a substantial change in the occupation and the effects of the occupation on the premises. Just quickly, for completeness, the supplementary matters explains, well, it provides the figures of the existing HMOs, which is 3 out of 61, that's 4.9. That's already exists and would not change with this certificate application. We're just providing that information for you. So there's a couple of doors, 3 doors along to the west and 1 to the northwest on Eastney Road. Thank you, David. And also in the SMAT, just a corrected location plan reference number. So back to the application. So the application's premise is that an increase in occupancy of 1 person does not result in a material change of use that requires planning permission. That view is supported, as the report sets out, by the plethora of appeal decisions we've had on exactly the same matter over the last 4 or so years, and on each and every one the planning inspectors have concurred that the increase in occupancies, mostly of 1, sometimes of 2 persons, has not resulted in a material change of use. This is the debate we have frequently at committee, normally when the planning application is applied for, but this is a certificate of lawfulness. So there is no judgment to be made on policy and the 10% rule. There's no judgment to be made on the adequacy of the accommodation. This is an application which is trying to establish that the increase in occupancy of 1 person does not require planning permission. If you happen to agree with that premise, as officers recommend, you need to grant the certificate which confirms the increase in occupancy of 1 person does not require planning permission. It is lawful. If you disagree, you need to refuse the application and give clear reasons. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Mr Walker, welcome. And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon all. Firstly, thank you for giving me the chance to speak today. I'm the owner of 37 Henderson Road. The reason for me speaking to you today and not my agent, Carrie-Anne /Applecore, is I believe it is important for you to speak with the responsible owner. I want to start by reassuring you, as per the office report and multiple similar planning inspectors' report, that this does not require planning permission. I also want to talk to you about how this property is run and how this is a place my tenants call home and not just a money grab, as one of the objections says. I'm a local landlord and I oversee the build and management of these properties personally. I'm the third generation of HMO investor in my family and have humongous care for my tenants. This is their home and I feel like this needs to be stressed. This house isn't just another statistic or application. This house is home to 6 and hopefully will be home to 7 people. As a landlord who owns and manages their own properties, it means my management of tenants is more attentive than a property owned by an investor with a management company on board. My tenants can call or text me at any time and they actually get listened to, not ignored, nor will they call up and get put through to an answer phone because an office is shut. I'm also at the property weekly and always give my phone number to direct neighbours should they need me. I wanted to talk to you about how this property is run, as I believe it is keen to know I have never had an incident in one of my properties, never had the police called, never had a property reported to the council, never had any neighbourhood disputes, never had any antisocial behaviour of any kind, and have never had any negative feedback from any parties whatsoever. If this application is granted today, I can ensure the committee that this room will be filled and tenanted by the end of the week. I say this to show the committee the high demand for high quality and affordable accommodation. I even have had 2 of the current tenants show an interest for friends of theirs who are looking for rooms and have seen the quality of room that we deliver. Portsmouth has a need for housing and this room is ready to go. It is already a totally usable, lettable space, not a brand new build application on green land. This room is sat there empty and ready to go. It would seem a horrendous waste for this room to continue not being used when it could instead be helping Portsmouth to house their residents. By failing this application today would only delay this much needed room to the market for 6 months whilst it went to appeal. I feel it would also be unethical for me not to raise concerns that if this property is not granted, it will end up going to appeal. The planning officer's report is very clear that multiple of these application types have been failed here in the committee but then upturned at appeal. From my studies, there have been 10 plus of these application types failed in this committee and all upturned at appeal, where costs were awarded when appropriate. The evidence does not get stronger than the evidence laid out in the officer's report, and I do not feel it fair on the community of Portsmouth to be charged for appeal costs on an application where the officer report and past evidence is so clear. For reference, the committee report set in front of you lists 11 different cases of the same nature, all upturned at appeal. Sadly, an appeal can include costs, and it seems unfair to add this financial burden to the Portsmouth Council taxpayers. I ask, even if you do disagree with the planning officer and senior planning inspector, that you assess this application differently due to its credits and management and approve this as a 7-bedroom sui gen HMO, even if you personally feel planning permission is required. During the original Henderson Road application to go from a C3 to a C4, which was accepted at this committee in December 2023, Councillor Smythe mentioned that this application should have been put through as a 7-bed, as the study and shower room were unneeded additional and would have made a perfectly good bedroom. Now, I want to raise the only reason that this application has gone through twice is because a year ago, sui gen applications and applications of this matter were upwards of a year. As company policy, we are no longer delaying these apps, doing these apps in 2 ways. This has been nothing but negative to all parties involved to delay this. As you might be able to tell, I'm personally extremely passionate about HMOs. Yes, this is my company and business, but I have personally lived in 2 HMOs within my life, and they were exactly what I needed at the time. I needed somewhere affordable and temporary, and without these, I would have had no other options. As a company, we have also just rebranded as a fully green HMO company and have the first of our new green HMOs being built in Bognor Regis at Curran. We also have another application in with Portsmouth Council, and this property will be powered via solar panels, an air source heat pump and rainwater recycling, which will harvest the rainwater and will run the grey water in the house, such as toilets. I've read the 4 validated objections to this application, to which none of them are in the local area. The closest objection is 2.5 miles away from this house, a 12-minute drive. I would like to point out not a single validated objection has been raised from Henderson Road, Ringwood Road or any of the surrounding roads. These objections have been placed not in regards to this application, but instead, in my opinion, as anti-HMO objections. I would like to conclude by thanking the officer who reviewed and did this report for this application for a very thorough and conclusive report, where he mentions private sector housing has no objections. None of the objections contained evidence against the application's assertion that planning is not required. The change between 6 to 7 occupants would have no change in the parking situation. It is unlikely any noise will change for neighbours. There is no evidence linking higher occupants level to antisocial behaviour, and he concludes by saying, it is therefore considered in the officer's review that in this instance, the increase in occupancy from a 6-person, 6-bedroom house of multiple occupancy to a 7-bedroom, 7-person house of multiple occupancy would not result in a significant difference in the character of activities that would occur within the property or character of the area. Therefore, would not be a material change of use, and so planning permission is not required. The officer backs this comment up by listing 11 applications of this application type that this committee failed, but were then upturned at appeal. I ask you to please look at the overwhelming evidence that this case has and either follow the officer's recommendation to grant a certificate of lawful use, and or if you must say this does require planning permission, then use your powers to grant this as a 7-bed sui gen HMO, saving costs at appeal. As far as I'm concerned, I think every single aspect of this application that could have been addressed has been, and the guidance from not only the planning officer but the past evidence of appeals could not be more clear. I'd also
you bring your comments to a conclusion, if you could.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to say I'd be really keen, regardless of today's verdict. I'm aware that this is the last application, to speak to any councillors that may have questions for an owner of this property type. You know, I'm aware that they don't see this committee, or they don't come to this committee that often. So, as I do think working together would be the best way to provide much needed, affordable, safe accommodation for the people of Portsmouth. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you very much indeed. Colleagues, questions? And so, colleagues, we're in a slightly difficult position because lots of people have come to us with a planning application for moving from 6 to 7. We have always disagreed with the planning officers and said that always it needs planning application, even though the planning officers said it doesn't. And actually, in most of those cases, because it then fits within the criteria, we then said yes to the uplifting from 6 to 7. In this case, we have an issue. So if this had been a planning application, I would have been recommending approval because it sits within the criteria. My problem is that we have been absolutely consistent to say that the planning application for an ordinary HMO is for 6 people and 6 bedrooms, and therefore anything bigger clearly is a different thing. We have a clear difference of view with the planning officers on this. But the gentleman who's the owner here has said if you do think it needs planning application, say yes. We're not allowed to. If we say that this needs a planning application, then we're not allowed then to say yes, it has to be a planning application. So I think we're in a slightly difficult place. In the last application, the planning officers said that we need to be consistent and with previous decisions in terms of the fences around the container. Here we have been consistent to say that if something is going from 6 to 7, it needs a planning application. If this had been a planning application, I would have been recommending saying it needs planning application, and I'd recommend approval. The advice we have from the planning officers here is either we say it's a certificate of lawful use and it didn't need planning permission anyway, which goes against what we've always been saying, or if we say it does need planning application, then this application falls. I don't know who advised you, sir, Mr. Walker, to do this as a certificate of lawful use as opposed to a planning application, but this is making it much, much more difficult, and it would have been much, 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 much easier if you'd done a planning application. Joel, yes.
I was just going to reply to that. By doing it this way, it was obviously quicker and more affordable, but the evidence is just undeniably there that, you know, every single one of these certificate of lawfulness, you know, rightly or wrongly, does get failed at this committee. I'm not going to give opinion on that, but every single one that gets failed goes to appeal, and in some cases costs rewarded. I don't think it would be ethical for me to sit here today and not raise that concern, because I don't believe the people of Portsmouth, me included being one of them, should be charged when that evidence is so clearly there.
But it might be, Mr Walker, that if you've done it through a planning application, you get a decision much quicker.
Chair, can we move on with determining the plan,
Yeah, okay,
this,
if we
this
are.
application?
It's really important that we do this, and we do this in a sensible way, because, Juliet, we have consistent advice, which we consistently disapprove of, and we consistently disagree with, and this is a thing that we need to debate through. So, colleagues, what is the way forward? Judith.
I haven't got an answer to that. I mean, I think there are many strengths to this way of doing it, but we still don't have information about room sizes and the size of the communal area, which I think is a key thing, because we do succeed where our standards are not being met.
But Judith, the advice we've got is that that is irrelevant to this application. David.
Yes, Chair. So in this instance, you're being asked a very simple, straightforward question, which is, if an extra person occupies this property, so that there are 7 people occupying the HMO, is that a material change of use from its current use as a 6-person HMO? Now, our view as officers, and as you've heard from the deputation, supported a number of times by the higher authority in the process, the planning inspector, who've deemed refusals based on the idea that it is a material change of use are so unreasonable that we've lost costs. Our view in this particular situation, it's not a blanket assessment. We're looking at the specifics, in this case, of going between 6 and 7. You are not applying the HMO SPD in this instance. You're making a judgment on whether it's a material change of use. That's a planning judgment. In most authorities that I have worked for, certificate of lawfulness would not be debated on by the planning committee. It would be a judgment done by officers because it's a technical planning professional assessment. But the question you're being asked today, is there a material change of use between 6 people occupying the property and 7? If you conclude that there is, as the Chair's already said, your only option is to refuse planning permission. Our advice is, as set out in the report, is that there is not a material change of use, and we do not believe we can defend a refusal on that basis for reasons set out in the report.
Judith. Sorry, Councillor Smythe.
I'm trying to look on my computer, but the fact is that just occasionally we go through one of these increases in numbers, and we discover that our standards are being compromised. Now, I can't even tell whether that's the case here because of the small size of the measurements. So I think I would have to defer from any, abstain from any decision because I haven't got the information I need to answer your simple question.
So, Councillor Smythe, if you look on the papers on page 53, you can see, or on the computer, so bedroom 5 is on the first floor and it includes an ensuite. Yes. That was accepted as the size of a room. So, bedroom 7, which is the one in question, is exactly above it. It doesn't have an ensuite in it, so therefore by nature it is bigger. Okay. No, okay.
Chairman, may I assist?
Simon, of course.
Can I try and assist again? I'll try and give an example to assist members in understanding the difference between a planning application and a certificate of lawfulness. I'll give a different sort of example. Many domestic extensions, a householder extension, single story at the back of a property, many of those, if they're small, depending on the circumstances, do not require planning permission. I think that's commonly understood by members of the public and certainly the planning committee. So most people don't apply for planning permission when they know or think that their very small domestic rear extension is going to be built. But some people do decide to apply for a certificate of lawfulness because they think that's going to be helpful, it will be, when they sell the property next year's time, rather than saying to the purchaser's solicitor, oh, that didn't need planning permission. They have a certificate confirming it doesn't need planning permission. And the local planning authority can't take a judgment on that, on the merits of that domestic extension. Is it too big, or the wrong colour, or poor design? Because it's a certificate of lawfulness. Is it lawful or not? So I'm trying to give you an example of the clarity needed when you decide that. That's why I said at the start, it's not a matter of assessing policy and the merits of the application on HMO numbers, on room sizes. We can't do that in a certificate of lawfulness. It simply is one extra person an occupancy increase that requires planning permission or not? If you believe it does not require planning permission, you therefore grant the certificate confirming that fact. If you believe, and you must find reasons for believing it, that the increase in occupancy does require planning permission, you have to refuse the certificate to confirm that position.
So can I, Mr Walker, I will be proposing to be consistent that we say no to this, because we always have done. It seemed to me, and that will mean that, as you said, you'll go to appeal and it'll take a while to go through the appeal, etc. I wonder if what's happened with all the other applications is that people have put in a planning application, it's come here, we've decided it needs planning application, and then if it meets all the criteria, we say yes. And I would have proposed that here. It would seem to me that will take much less time than going to appeal than just putting in a planning application for this, at which point we don't go around this problem. Is that something that you would consider doing?
Chair, we're here to determine the application.
Yes, and this is going to help.
Can you just let me speak, please? We're here to determine an application under Section 192 of the Town and Country Planning Act, which is a certificate of lawfulness for proposed use. The applicant has put in an application, and that is what we are here to determine today. You cannot start asking the applicant in the middle of the meeting to put in a planning application. We are here to determine this application.
Okay. Can I just
really
quickly say, to confirm previous councillor's question, all bedrooms are at 10 metres squared, the communal is 24.5. This property is fully compliant. Yeah. Now, I completely agree that we might have a opinion on how this should have been, and you know, I'll plan on taking note for that in the future, but the application you see in front of you is fully legal, compliant, and if it were to go to appeal, I just feel it's a tremendous waste of money. You know, I personally don't feel comfortable putting that cost burden on the people of Portsmouth when the evidence is so clear.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much. That's very helpful for your answer. In which case, I'm happy to propose that we refuse this on the grounds that it clearly needs planning permission, because the increase in the number of people will lead to, in an area of very high issues with parking and traffic, more pressure on that. We know that HMOs produce more rubbish, more antisocial behaviour and noise, and therefore I will be proposing that we say no to this planning application, to this granting of certificate of lawful use, because this does need a planning application. Do I have a seconder? No, I don't, in which case then somebody else needs to propose. Oh, Councillor Shah, I have a seconder. Are there any other proposals? Councillor Mason?
In case that falls, I propose the officer's recommendation with a statement alongside it that this does not constitute a precedent.
Okay, we're always
because it is contrary to our what could be considered a precedent, which would be to refuse this. And therefore we are saying that this does not constitute a precedent in other cases, and this will enable us to do something which is eminently sensible, which is to that this would be 7 persons, but without compromising ourselves for the future.
Okay.
Can I second that, please?
You can, of course.
Can I just come back on that point? Each time that you get a certificate of lawfulness application you need to consider that on the facts for that case. To say that we're setting a precedent, if someone else puts in if someone else wants to put in a certificate of lawfulness, we will have to determine it in the way in accordance with the legislation. So saying that it would be a precedent is not
No, he's saying the exact opposite, saying it's not a precedent. Okay. So, Councillor Mason, I thought you said that you wanted the note to say that this was not set a precedent, not that it
Yes,
would.
because we can't set precedents in planning, okay. But I want to emphasise that this is not a precedent.
Okay, Juliet, are you happy with that?
Well, no, what I'm telling you is that you have to determine each of these certificates of lawfulness in accordance with the legislation. So you're not setting us precedent each time you determine a certificate of lawfulness. So,
Yeah, Chair, de facto, you're not setting a precedent because each certificate application will be different. It's superfluous, is what we're saying.
Okay, I think the report says and quotes other cases which are clearly being used as precedent. So we seem to have slightly different interpretations. But anyway, so we have two proposals on the table. We'll come to them in order. So my proposal, which was put in first, was that we say no. Can I see those in that we say no to the certificate of lawful use? Can I see those in favour of saying no? Please show. That's two. And those against, please show. And those abstaining, please show. In which case that is carried, and therefore there is no certificate of lawful use granted.
No, Chair, that's incorrect. The refusal of the certificate of lawfulness falls because the vote was 2 for, and how many against?
Zero.
Sorry, none against.
Zero against.
And then...
And 2 abstaining.
No.
Okay, shall we do the vote again?
No, everyone else abstained, Chair. It was 2 for.
I see no harm in doing the vote again, because I think there is a little bit of...
There were 8 abstentions.
Yes, and 2...
Therefore, and 0 against. Therefore, that is 2 in favour, none against, 8 with no view.
Sorry, Chair, you are correct.
Okay, all right, so let's do it again, just to see if we can get it right. Can I see those in favour of refusing a certificate of lawful use, please show. 2. Can I see those who do think we should give a certificate of lawful use, please show. 1, 2, 3 and a half. Those in favour of abstaining on a view of this, please show. 3. Therefore, the 3 and a half who think it does need, we should give a certificate of lawful use win against the 2 who said no.
No, Chair.
So that thing falls. We now move on to the second vote, which is the proposal to give a certificate of lawful use. Can I see those in favour of giving a certificate of lawful use? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Chair, was that with Councillor Mason's
Yes.
superfluous statement?
Yes.
I'm in favour.
5 in favour. Can I see those against? Please show. And those abstaining, please show. Therefore, a certificate of lawful use is granted.
Thank you.
That, folks, is the end of the Planning Committee. Just, Councillor Shah, to meet your time. Thank you, everybody, for meeting today.